Chapter 1820. The weather in Baiyuan is too cold. It's only the end of autumn and the beginning of winter. The capital city of Baiyuan has been covered in snow for 2 months. The snow in Shui City has reached its ankles. Although our soldiers are not afraid of the cold and heat, the weather is bad, and it's not suitable to fight. I think, since the aristocrats of Baiyuan have created such good psychological conditions for us, why not use this as a breakthrough? Now Baiyuan is a damn in danger. We only need to find their weakest point and give them a fatal blow. Even if we don't do anything, they will collapse on their own. The first step was to attack conspiracies, then to attack friends, then to attack soldiers, and finally to attack the city. If they could conquer Baiyuan with the least loss of public opinion, why would Jiang Pingji let the soldiers take the risk and send troops? The weather conditions in Baiyuan were too bad. Even if the soldiers of Baiyuan were vulnerable, they had lived here all year round, and were far more adaptable to the climate than them. Jiang Pingji was fighting in an away game. Of course, she was at a disadvantage in terms of water and soil. If the soldiers caused a widespread epidemic because of physical discomfort, it would give the enemy a chance to fight back. Not to mention whether the enemy could seize the opportunity, Jiang Pingji should not have made such a fatal mistake. Qiguan Rang said. My lord and I have the same idea, but, Jiang Pingji asked, but what? Qiguan Rang made a gesture of apology. Before Jiang Pingji arrived, he was too ruthless in dealing with the refugees of Baiyuan. If Baiyuan used this to bewitch the people and make them want to fight to the death, even if the possibility was small, it was Qiguan Rang who gave the enemy something to use against him. Jiang Pingji exempted him from apologizing. How can you be blamed for this? You did nothing wrong. If it were me, I wouldn't have done it better than you. Qiguan Rang did not kill all the refugees as soon as he arrived. The refugees who committed the crime for the first time were all given dry food and persuaded. If this was considered ruthless, what else could Jiang Pingji say? She said, Wenzheng, why don't you listen to my plan? Qiguan Rang listened attentively and said respectfully, My lord, please speak. Jiang Pingji tapped her finger on the table. Last night, I sent someone to ask the people of Baiyuan who fled with Jiqing. Most of them had the impression of war, death, plague, and barrenness about Dongqing and the other 3 countries. They were extremely certain. Ma Xiu was not fooled. He was also one of the few people who believed that the situation in Dongqing was stable, but he was not sure to what extent. Qiguan Rang said, This is exactly what I want to tell you, my lord. In order to prevent the people from escaping through the border, Baiyuan not only strictly guards the border and cruelly kills the people who try to escape, but also sends people to fool the people from time to time and publicize some groundless human tragedies. Jiang Pingji sneered. For example, I killed a lot of people, exploited and oppressed the people, and made the land barren and full of bones. Qiguan Rang said helplessly, The words that they spread are much harsher than the Lord's. They also fabricate more false content. Killing people was still considered polite. Cannibalism, eating children, bathing in women's blood to maintain beauty, kidnapping pregnant women to perform a C-section for fun, and having 3,000 beautiful men and 3,000 beautiful women, with no taboo between men and women, engaging in open-air nude debauchery. All in all, it seemed that his lord wanted a copy of everything that King Zhou, who had been slandered like a dog, had done in the investiture of the gods. Not only did she have to copy, but she also had to come up with new ideas. And new ideas had to be innovated. In short, she had to be as slandered as possible. Qiguan Rang deeply suspected that the people in Baiyuan, who were engaged in the Internet Water Army, were fans of the investiture of the gods. While they eagerly followed the story of Wanzhou, they racked their brains to frame their lord, saying that the world was a big melting pot. Only in this way would the people know fear, and continue to endure the hellish days on earth. Look, the world outside Baiyuan was like that. You would regret it if you went there. It was better to stay in Baiyuan. Although Baiyuan couldn't let you eat your fill, it could let you drag out an ignoble existence. As one of the targets of slander, Qiguan Rang only wanted to smash the heads of these idiots. How could they slander his lord? When Qiguan Rang first saw this information, he had secretly thought about capturing them in the future, and cutting off their dog paws with a knife. That's all they can do. Otherwise, they wouldn't have tormented Beiyuan like this. Jiang Pingji sneered. They say that I'm muddle-headed, tyrannical, and repulsive, but there are still people who can't bear it and take the risk to flee. It shows how much they've gone overboard. Qiguan Rang gently waved his feather fan and smiled. His thoughts were the same as his lord's. Another official asked, My lord, do you want the people of Beiyuan to know the real Dongqing? Jiang Pingji said, If we don't let them know how good the people of Dongqing are living, how will they know that they've been fooled? The more the aristocrats of Beiyuan squeeze the people, the stronger the backlash. But, if the people flee here one after another, should we accept them or not? Whether they accept them or not, it didn't seem right. Jiang Pingji said matter-of-factly, No. Why should we accept them? Is it fun to move these days? Or is it not troublesome to move across borders? We're not going to guide the people of Beiyuan to seek refuge in Dongqing, nor are we going to drag their families away from their homeland. We want to let them know that even if Beiyuan changes its master, they can still live as well as the people of Dongqing. We also want them to know that their lives are even worse than the people who wander from place to place in troubled times. By the way, we should send someone to bribe the general who guards the border. It should work. The general who guards the border? Bribe that person? That general has a very good reputation among the martial artists. I'm afraid it won't be easy to persuade him. Although bribing the enemy general was normal, it also depended on the situation. If they met a loyal general, bribing him would only bring disgrace upon themselves. If they were unlucky, they might even fall into the enemy's trap. Jiang Pingji sneered. If he's really capable, how can he not even keep an eye on a group of refugees? I originally thought that person was greedy and lazy. He didn't care about these refugees, and was too lazy to carry out the order issued by the royal family of Beiyuan, to kill the people who fled. Now that I look at it, it's not entirely true. Perhaps this general still has some conscience, so he turned a blind eye to it, and gave the refugees a way out. If it was greed and dereliction of duty, it could be bribed with money. By then, if the public opinion fermented well, Jiang Pingji could collude with the general to open the door, and create the halo of a king's teacher. If it was someone with a conscience that had not been extinguished, then it would be even better. He would be moved by emotion and reason, and he would be moved by the righteousness of the world. Then, he would be tempted by benefits, and he would not have any worries after he sought refuge with them. This would also achieve the best effect. Of course, if the general was unmoved by force or persuasion, Jiang Pingji could only use force to attack. Who gave the old, weak, and disabled soldiers of Beiyuan the courage to think that they could guard this stupid pass? I don't deny that there is eternal loyalty in this world, but it's just the tip of a phoenix's feather. Chapter 1821. When the officials retreated, they went about their own business. Qiguan Rang waved his feather fan, and complained to Jiang Pingji. My lord, you shouldn't have said such things to them. It will make you seem suspicious and heartless. It will be written about in the history books in the future. For the officials, if the ruler did not trust them from the bottom of his heart, would there be any sense of security? Jiang Pingji smiled and said, Wenzheng, do you think I said something wrong? Qiguan Rang said seriously, My lord, what you said is reasonable, but there are too many people in the world who like to deceive themselves and refuse to face themselves. Until the critical moment, everyone felt that they were the most loyal, and should be rewarded for their loyalty. When Qiguan Rang was studying in the early years, he discovered that many so-called famous officials did not have much ability. For example, the court officials of Dongqing in the past. But they used their loyalty to the ruler in exchange for positions that were unworthy of their abilities. They even brainwashed themselves and swore that they were extremely loyal to the ruler. In the end, when Dongqing collapsed, these people were the fastest to change their allegiance. The flags that were raised back then were slapped in the face at that moment. But these people did not feel any pain. That was amazing. What was even more amazing was that his lord snorted at their words and actions. She only stopped short of pointing at their noses and telling them not to do this. How capable you are is how important your job is. Swearing loyalty to her will not even get you a single grain of rice. Then let them read. Will I lose a piece of meat? Regardless of whether he was heartless or hypocritical, he spoke as if she could hear what these people were saying. A person who has the brains to say such ridiculous things, not to mention the people of the future, even if he is in the present, he doesn't have the right to stand in front of me and say such things to me. So why should I care about how they bark at me? Qiguan Rang was silent for 3 breaths. He suddenly laughed and waved the feather fan in his hand even more cheerfully. What attracted him the most about Jiang Pingji? Not only were their minds connected, but it was also the arrogance and confidence that had not changed since they were young. To Qiguan Rang, it was far more attractive than a drug pinned to a drug addict. Wenjing, let's discuss something. Jiang Pingji faintly looked at the fan in his hand and extended 4 fingers, indicating that Qiguan Rang should recognize that he was a man in his 40s. His body was not as strong as when he was young. Could he not hold his precious fan on a snowy day? It was fine to hold the fan, but could he not fan here and there? After so many years, did Qiguan Rang not realize that no one liked to play with him in winter? Qiguan Rang's smile slowly disappeared. In the streaming room, Qiguan Rang Jiang Pingji. His head could be broken and he would bleed. Jiang Pingji was not. Well, as he said Jiang Pingji he would be. Jiang Zhou Jiang with the guard. As with he. And Jiang was he. Jiang Rang, Jiang are Shui. And Jiang, said of. And said. Jiang of the Jiang, even a Jiang even. Could. Even though. When the garrison general asked, the messenger sent by Jiang Pingji hurriedly explained that it was because the refugees from Beiyuan had caused the people at the border of Dongqing to suffer unspeakably. That was why the current situation was created. He did not have the slightest intention of destroying the friendship between the 2 countries. He just wanted to seek justice for the victims. Underscore this level of lying was probably equivalent to pointing out that laundry detergent was a chemical weapon. If they really wanted to seek justice, why would they need to deploy 250,000 soldiers to poke at their doorstep? Of course, the defending general did not dare to answer the messenger's question directly. He did not even acknowledge that the refugees were the people of the North Abyss. The citizens of our Beiyuan kingdom are generous and righteous. How could we commit such evil acts as burning, killing, looting, and raping the citizens of our neighboring country? Even if he really smuggled in illegally, he would still be an honest person who knew his place. The messenger used this as a breakthrough point and started chatting. For example, I heard that the taxes in Beiyuan are very heavy. How much taxes do the people pay every year? Are they still living well after paying so much taxes? Do they have enough to eat and wear? Is the place they live in leaky? I heard from the refugees that the situation in Beiyuan is not very good. Do they need help from the neighboring country? Everyone is doing this for the sake of the people. Don't stand on ceremony. The garrison general's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. At first he could still handle it. Later, he felt that the messenger knew too much. However, he was the messenger sent by Jiang Pingji. No matter how bad his mouth was, he could not simply kill him. After chatting about this, the messenger began to care about the garrison general's family situation. Questions such as, which family does old Tai come from? Oh, so he was born from a commoner's grassroots background. Old Tai is awesome. It's not easy to start from scratch these days. How many people are there in his family? Where are his uncle, aunt, sister-in-law, nephew and niece now? Old Tai is fighting a war alone. Does he miss them? How's the salary? Is it enough for the family's expenses? If it's not enough, why not consider jumping ship and finding a better job? The garrison general's face turned green as he listened. It just so happened that the messenger was testing him while stepping on his bottom line. He could not explode even if he wanted to. Most importantly, when the garrison general was perfunctorily dealing with the messenger, he revealed a lot of personal information. The messenger had obviously done his homework. He knew that the garrison general had started from scratch and was being oppressed by his superiors who were born from aristocratic families. He knew how much credit had been stolen from him. He even knew that his wife had been ridiculed by other noble women in some public places. He knew about the grievances he had suffered all these years. How could he quickly close the relationship between the 2 of them? Of course, it was to accompany him in ridiculing the gossip of the people he hated, and be his intimate trash can. Although the garrison general did not complain to the messenger, he was shaken by the words. At this time, the messenger did not propose to engage in a shady transaction. Instead, he mentioned a successful example that was similar to the garrison general's starting point. Look at the military generals under Lord Zhang's banner. Some were born from aristocratic families of generals, but most of them were born into commoners. They were not suppressed, and their military achievements were taken away. Seeing that the garrison general did not believe him, the messenger pretended to be surprised and mentioned some rumors he had heard. I heard that my lord's reputation in Beiyuan is mostly untrue and false. Have you heard of it, General? The garrison general was shocked. He broke out in a cold sweat and smiled. How could that be? Where did the messenger hear these words? If he directly confirmed the truth of Beiyuan discrediting Jiang Pingji, and admitted that they were the ones who stirred up those messy rumors, Jiang Pingji would directly carry the flag and attack them. What, attacking without a good reason? Fighting to defend one's dignity? That was sufficient reason enough. Looking at the history of the predecessors, there was no lack of humiliating the monarch of a country, which then led to the destruction of the country. Even if the two countries were bound to fight, the garrison general could not let the information be used against them. The garrison general flatly rejected the idea. The messenger sneered again and again. After 3 rounds of wine, the messenger said that he had something to say to the garrison general. He hoped that the garrison general could dismiss his attendance. The garrison general had a guilty conscience. After hesitating for a while, he agreed. The messenger took the opportunity to extend an olive branch and promised many generous conditions. The garrison general absolutely refused. Chapter 1822. The envoy did not get angry. Instead, he smiled and said, "General, you are wrong. A fine bird chooses a tree to rest in, and a virtuous minister chooses a master to serve. Is the current royal family of Beiyuan really the legitimate one? It was merely a vile person who used bloody and despicable means to snatch it. At the end of the day, it was not justifiable. If that was the case, how could they bear the general's loyalty? Worthy of the general's unwavering loyalty, dare I ask the general, are you loyal to the regicide and usurping Yi family, or to the people of Beiyuan? The Yi family usurped the throne. They should have been executed." The general was distraught, but he had to admit that the messenger was right. "General, the emissary struck while the iron was hot. The Yi family is in power, and they conferred titles of nobility. Their entire family ate up the national treasury until there was nothing left. It's not an exaggeration to say that they are the biggest rats in the country. In order to satisfy his own selfish desires, he increased taxes and oppressed the common people, causing the wilderness to stretch for thousands of miles. Bones piled up, and the road to the Yellow Springs was completely blocked. These crimes, dare I ask all the civil and military officials in the imperial court, who doesn't know about them? General, if you can overthrow the tyranny of the Yi clan with the help of my lord's power, you will be avenging the wrongful death of the late lord, and upholding justice for the hundreds of millions of people in the North Abyss." The defending general really believed it, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. Master Yi was indeed a sycophant who usurped the throne. All these years, the people of Beiyuan had no way to live. This was also an indisputable fact. The envoy said with a smile, "I heard that there are still some descendants of the former royal family of the Beiyuan living in exile outside?" The general glared at him and berated, "Who said that?" The messenger was not afraid of the general's threat at all. Instead, he said calmly, "Whether this rumor is true or not, it has left a trace of bloodline for the former royal family of the Beiyuan. If the Yi clan knew about this, they would definitely be anxious, and they would wish for nothing more than to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots, so as to put an end to any future troubles, right? Has the general ever thought that if you can find these descendants and help them to be conferred the title of nobility in the future, wouldn't that prove your loyalty?" The defending general was a little uncertain. Because of the abnormal customs of the Beiyuan, it was not a shameful thing for men to leave seeds everywhere and have children. Who knew if the men of the Baiyuan royal family had left seeds after a night of romance? The Yi clan claimed that the entire Baiyuan royal family had been killed. But was that even possible? Was it impossible for someone to slip through the net? Putting everything else aside, the landowning gentry who had created the world record and had hundreds of daughters and sons was still the subject of much discussion. For the sake of power, the landowning gentry desperately gave birth to children. When their children grew up, they would enter the imperial court and fight for the right to speak. Was the imperial family going to keep themselves clean? Most importantly, the emissary said this in front of him, so it was most likely that the descendant of the royal family was in their hands. The envoy did not look at the military general's changing expression and calmly persuaded. All the civil and military officials in the Baiyuan imperial court know that Master Yi is a villain who usurped the throne, and a sinner who subverted the universe. But why doesn't anyone say anything? Why does everyone pretend to be deaf and mute? Wasn't it because they were afraid of death? Wasn't it because they were vile people who fawned on the rich and powerful? Wasn't it all because they were afraid of getting into trouble and being accused of treason by the Yi clan? However, the general was different. The general was a truly loyal and valiant general. Why would he be afraid of such things? If you take the right path, when the political situation in Baiyuan is clear, and the people live and work in peace, it will be clear who the people should praise and who they should criticize. The general seemed to have been injected with chicken blood by the envoy's words. The latter said, "Who is truly loyal to the emperor and thinks for the sake of the country and the common people? Does the general know?" "It's you, the general." Listening to the messenger spout nonsense with a straight face, the balance in the commander's heart tilted towards Jiang Pengji with a thud. After a long time, the general bowed to the envoy and said with a firm gaze, "Please teach me how to eradicate the villains of the Yi clan." The envoy laughed heartily and helped the general, whose eyes were glistening with tears. With such a loyal person like the general in Baiyuan, why worry about the torch not being passed on? Next, it was time for the envoy to sell his lord and Dongqing in Wanzhou to the general. Listening to the envoy's description of the prosperous times, the general looked as if he had been deceived. He cursed the Yi clan for being treacherous and scoundrels. The envoy asked in surprise, "Why is the general so angry?" The defending general sighed and shook his head. The bastards of the Yi clan really spared no effort in defaming Jiang Pengji. Even the general was dubious. The envoy's face was solemn, but he was already sharpening his knife in his heart. When these little bastards of the Yi clan broke through the royal city of Baiyuan, he would capture them one by one and chop off their hands. The general entertained the envoy well, settled him in the best courtyard, and sent the most beautiful women to sleep with him. The envoy smiled and refused. "I have a fierce wife at home, I dare not enjoy it." The general was shocked. What was wrong with a man sleeping with a woman? Besides, it wasn't as if the envoy was going to sleep with her and bring her back. It was just something to relieve himself. Was the envoy so afraid? The envoy sighed. Has the general forgotten whether my lord is a man or a woman? As a subject, I should at least follow the thoughts of the lord. The general understood and could only remove the women serving him. That night, the envoy ordered the guards he brought to keep watch and inform him to escape if there was any movement. The guard said, "Counselor, did you convince that person?" Feng Zhen clicked his tongue and rolled his eyes. "Who knows if he's just playing along with me? Maybe he'll come to kill me in the middle of the night?" He had obviously underestimated the power of his verbal rap and overestimated the upper limit of the general. The night passed peacefully. Feng Zhen even dreamed that Wan Xiao'er gave him an encouraging kiss, and the two of them were in a frenzy. He didn't have an affair outside, and he still knew how to keep his chastity. Not bad, not bad. After waking up, Feng Zhen muttered as he put on his clothes. Of course, can Xiao'er's color be compared to any ordinary rouge or powder? He was as pure as ice and clean as jade. Could any woman touch him? What a joke. After dealing with the general and confirming that they could flirt, Feng Zhen's mission was considered complete. He left contentedly. When Jiang Pengji saw Feng Longzi, who was flushed with success, she looked him up and down with a faint smile. Feng Zhen couldn't help but shiver. His hairs were standing on end from his lord's stare. Does my lord feel that something is wrong? Jiang Pingji smiled. No, everything is right. Fengzhen couldn't help but mutter to himself. If there was nothing wrong, why was she staring at him like that? Qiguan Rang asked. Is that general reliable? Fengzhen said. Whether he's reliable or not, it's fine as long as he's useful. If he only relies on his brain, he won't have much success in the future. Boorish people deserved to be tricked into his trap. Fengzhen was probably a scumbag. Yesterday he was still sweet-talking the general. His mouth seemed to be smeared with honey. He had just settled the general, and now he was pulling up his pants and ignoring him. Would the general be heartbroken if he knew? Sob, sob, sob? Confucius once said, I'd rather believe in ghosts in the world than believe in a strategist's lousy mouth. The reason the general was tricked was probably because he was too uneducated. Smiley face, angle. After a few days, Fengzhen and the general secretly communicated and put the prepared public opinion proposal on the market. With the general's help to add fuel to the fire, the effect was really great. Chapter 1823. Inyai porridge. Compared to the turbulence at the front line, the days at the rear defense line were much more leisurely. The two princes were also thriving like bamboo shoots after the rain. For example, the eldest prince was more proficient in speaking and had a tendency to be a chatterbox, while the second prince was still a man of few words and was as steady as Mount Tai. Scare him early. The eldest prince had ideas since he was young, especially after realizing that his status was extraordinary. He did things more and more like a model. The second prince lazily raised his eyelids and turned around to face the eldest prince. She didn't want to mess around with the Jiang family's little brat. This brat was obsessed with appearances, but she wasn't, and she had no interest in Wei Ci. Inyai. The eldest prince pushed his sister's shoulder and shouted coquettishly, Inyai, go scare him early. The second prince was speechless. Speaking of which, why did a 1-year-old child know how to act cute? Didn't she know that it was against the rules? The female official on the side smiled and echoed, The eldest prince likes Mr. Wei very much. The eldest prince grinned, revealing a few small white teeth, and said, Scare him very well. As someone obsessed with appearances, the eldest prince had never hidden this from a young age. Her closest maids and servants were all good-looking. The female official said, Mr. Wei will come to teach in an hour. Your Highness, you will see him in a little while. The eldest prince didn't quite understand the meaning of the whole sentence, but she could understand the second half, so she obediently sat and waited. The female official saw that the two princes were so cooperative that she wanted to get married and have children. Smiley face, angle. The colleague heard her thoughts and couldn't help but roll his eyes to discourage her. How can an ordinary child compare to the two princes? What is their background? And what is our prince's background? How can it be the same? The colleague said, What is an ordinary 1-year-old child like? It's already good enough that they can call out their parents. How can they express themselves like a 2-year-old child like the eldest prince? Most of them are still drinking milk at 5 or 6 years old. But the two princes are extraordinary since they were in their mother's womb. Think about it. Has anyone ever worried about His Highness since he was born? As expected of the reincarnation of Ziwei Star, he was born extraordinary. Her Highness Lian had been intelligent for a long time, while Her Highness Yen had been too lazy to discern her aptitude. But it wasn't too bad. Giving birth to a child was not easy, but to give birth to a child with the same aptitude as the two princes was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Her colleague's words successfully dispelled the female official's thoughts. When Wei Ci came to teach on time, the eldest prince ran towards him like a cannonball and hugged his thigh tightly. Wow, I want a hug. Wei Ci hurriedly bent down to steady her so that she wouldn't fall. Then he bowed respectfully. Your subject Wei Ci greets your First Highness. While Wei Ci was bowing, the first prince grinned and leaned forward to plant a wet kiss on his cheek. If you want to scare me, give me a hug. His Royal Highness couldn't help curling his lips when he saw this. Her outgoing personality really took after her mother. At such a young age, she had already learned to flirt without a teacher. What would happen when she grew up? If Jiang was fighting at the front line? Ji wondered if she would sneeze if she knew that her daughter had made a move on her husband. Princess Lian, you mustn't do this in the future. Wei Xi was momentarily stunned. He patiently advised Her Highness to pay attention to her image. It was time to change her bad habit of being obsessed with looks. Do you want to scare me? She had been bored the whole day. The courtyard was only so big. She got bored after walking a few rounds. Her younger sister didn't play with her, so the thing she looked forward to the most every day was seeing Wei Xi. It wasn't just because Wei Xi was good-looking, but also because they were naturally close by blood. Wei Xi rarely overstepped his authority. He raised his hand to stroke the eldest prince's soft hair and chuckled. I miss your highness very much too. Not far away, there were female officials and servants standing guard. Wei Xi couldn't be too intimate with her. He pacified the little one and began to prepare for the lesson. Her Highness Lian's talent was similar to Her Highness Jiang Yan's in his previous life. Not only did she speak early and learn early, but she also had a strong memory. Wei Xi had experienced it once, so when he taught the twins, his teaching speed wasn't slow. They didn't need to understand the meaning of these books now. They only needed to memorize them. When they were older, it would be much easier to formally enlighten them. As usual, the eldest prince didn't last until the end. When Wei Xi finished, she was so sleepy that she curled up into a ball. Her saliva wet the mat. He carried the two children back to the room and asked the female official what she had done and said today. In the end, Wei Xi also asked, did anyone come to see the two princes today? The female official was quite puzzled. Ever since Lord Jiang left for the war, Wei Xi had asked this question every afternoon. Who would look for the two princes when Lord Jiang wasn't around? The two princes were too young. They couldn't even speak or walk properly. What was the use of looking for them? She had these doubts in her heart, but the female official didn't show it. Instead, she replied as usual, no. Today, driven by curiosity, she asked another question. Is Mr. Wei worried about the two princes' safety? Wei Xi smiled and said, the two princes' sleeping quarters are tightly guarded. Who could sneak past the guards and hurt the princes? It's just that the two princes are still young. They need to be more thorough in all aspects and can't slack off. Therefore, I have no other intention in asking this question. The female official's doubts disappeared. The two thought that they had spoken very softly, but they didn't know that the second prince in the room heard every word. As expected, Wei Xi wasn't completely clueless. It was just that some things couldn't be avoided with strict precautions. Even if he tightly guarded the sleeping quarters, it would still be easy for the bad guy to come in and take away the two babies. The bad guy's purpose was not just to deal with the two babies. After Wei Xi left, he met Su Ke. Su Ke had been busier recently. With the war in Beiyuan and Xichang, he had to worry about the logistics and food supplies. He had lost 2 sizes at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although there were others to share the work, Su Ke was the head butler of the Ji family. He knew the situation of the food supplies very well. Some important things had to be done by him. Outsiders would only add to the trouble if they tried to help. In this way, he had lost weight. After returning to the mansion, the servants told him that Cheng Jing was waiting for him. Master's wife fried some melon seeds and dried a few caddies of dried fruits. Considering that there was no one to take care of you in the mansion, she sent me to deliver some to you. The melon seeds fried by Master's wife were delicious. Back then, Jiang, Ji and Lu Zheng stole a lot of them. Cheng Jing and the others weren't greedy for good food, but they didn't dare to refuse Master's wife's kindness. No matter how small the snacks were, they were still her kind intentions. They didn't dare to refuse the elders' gifts. Cheng Jing was a man of meticulous observation. Seeing that Wei Xi's eyebrows were a little worried, he asked casually. Wei Xi hesitated for a moment. Yumo, if you are loyal to someone, but that person doesn't give you a chance to make a name for yourself, will you blame him? Cheng Jing chewed the melon seeds and guessed correctly. Chapter 1824. Wei Xi was stunned when he heard the 2 words Su Ke from Cheng Jing's mouth. His expression was one of astonishment. Senior brother, why? Wei Xi rarely used the form of address he used when he was younger. Cheng Jing was older than Wei Xi and had taken good care of him when he was studying. Wei Xiai used to call him senior brother. However, as they grew up, the close relationship between fellow disciples turned into a friendship between gentlemen, and they began to address each other by their proper names. Cheng Jing asked Wei Xiai in return, "You think it's hard to guess? Or, do you want to know why I guessed that the person you mentioned was Suku? Zixiao, don't you think that among all the officials under Lord Zhang's banner, only Suku stands out from the rest? He's more special than Qiguan Rang." Wei Xiai was silent for a while. "Senior brother, can you tell me, what's so special about him?" Cheng Jing got up and looked around. After confirming that there were no outsiders, he cautiously sat back down. Among the important officials under Lord Zhang's banner, there are 3 who have the lowest status, Zixiao. I am not looking down on their backgrounds, but this is an undeniable fact. Yang Si, Qiguan Rang, and Suku. Among the 3 of them, Yang Si can be considered the master's adopted son. His studies and enlightenment were all taken care of by the master, but it is an indisputable fact that his mother came from a prostitute's family. Not to mention Qiguan Rang. He was born from a girl at the border of Dongqing forced by the horse bandits of the northern borderline. He was of mixed blood and was not recognized by the 2 tribes. His birth was equally disgraceful and had been criticized for many years. What Cheng Jing said was the truth. It was also what Yang Si and Qiguan Rang hated the most when people mentioned it. The third person, Suku. Cheng Jing paused at the mention of Suku. Compared to Yang Si and Qiguan Rang, Suku's presence was almost non-existent. He would only occasionally attract the attention of the outside world. Suku offended the aristocrats when he was young. Even though he killed them out of filial piety, this cannot hide the fact that he was branded and exiled. Even though he was released from his lowly status by Lord Zhang and returned to a respectable status, the obvious tattoos on his face could not be concealed. Anyone who has seen him would know what kind of background he has. After saying so much, Cheng Jing was a little thirsty. He poured himself a cup of tea to moisten his throat. In terms of status, the 3 of them are equally matched. Wei Xiai said, "My lord has never been particular about one's family background, only about one's ability and moral character." Cheng Jing nodded in agreement. "That's right. After so many years of observation, she has indeed implemented this very well. She has never shown any favoritism. But here comes the question. Has Lord Zhang really not been biased in these past few years? Zixiao, ask yourself honestly. If this question was asked to you, you wouldn't be able to answer it either, right? Had Lord Zhang ever shown favoritism? To Suku, she's probably the most biased person." Wei Xi's face turned cold after hearing this. He pursed his lips and did not answer. Cheng Jing said, "Suku, Qiguan Rang, and Yang Si. Other than Yang Si, the other 2 were acquainted with Lord Zhang when he was young. There was no need to mention Suku. Not only was he the first person to meet Jiang Jun, he was also Jiang Jun's study attendant when he was young, a steward who had been entrusted with heavy responsibilities. If Lord Zhang was just an ordinary nobleman, Suku wouldn't have mistreated him if he had been her housekeeper and accountant. But Lord Zhang is not an ordinary aristocratic son. She has walked from humble beginnings to where she is today. She is only 1 step away from ascending the throne, and she will become the future emperor of the world." All these years, Cheng Jing had been observing the world from the perspective of a bystander. At the same time, he had also observed Jiang Su, Ji and the other officials. After observing for a while, he found Suku to be an anomaly. In terms of friendship, no one could compare to him and Jiang Ji's childhood friendship. In terms of talent, Suku could not be compared to Jiang Qinghu. Ji had been taking care of the rear for so many years and had put in a lot of hard work. In terms of reputation, he was at the bottom of the list of important ministers. Ever since Yang Si followed Lord Jiang, he has been participating in every battle and rarely had the chance to oversee the rear. When Lord Jiang had yet to prosper, she had handed over the extremely important Hu County to Yang Si, ordering him to train the troops and take charge of all affairs in Hu County. After that, he gave him the authority to deal with the Su brothers. After that, Yang Si's official career was even smoother, and he had many military achievements. Relying on these military achievements, who would dare to be presumptuous and despise his background in front of Yang Si? Not to mention Qiguan Rang. His glorious battle record is even better than Yang Si's. The battle at Zhongzhou was truly brilliant. Not only did he have meritorious service to back him up, he also had Lord Zhang's complete trust. Now, is there anyone who dares to speak ill of his family background to his face? Cheng Jing's words made sense. If one looked carefully, one would find Jiang Su. The Empress Dowager Ji treats her officials who were born poor and commoners really well. It was not that he was biased towards them, nor was it that he could not distinguish right from wrong. Ji Yinshu was the fairest vassal Cheng Jing had ever seen. But did this mean that she was not biased? Of course not. She was biased because she would give these people a chance to make contributions and let them speak with facts. As long as they performed meritorious deeds, any reward would not be excessive. With meritorious service and rewards, their status and weight would rise accordingly. In comparison, the officials of landowning households were slightly weaker. Of course, if one didn't look closely, one wouldn't be able to notice it. Even if they found out, Yang Si and the others also spoke with their strength and did not rely on nepotism to get to the top, so there was nothing to criticize. Whether it was the civil officials or the military generals, almost all of them were like that. Among the generals, Li, Fu Wang, Dianyan, Jiang Nongqin, Meng Hun. These people did not come from noble families, but they had many opportunities to lead troops and lead battles. They were strong themselves, so it was not difficult for them to accumulate military merits. Of course, this also had to do with Jiang Su. It was because there were too few generals in Ji Ye's tent. Even if he absorbed Yang Tao's former subordinates in the later stages of the game, there weren't many battles left. He still couldn't surpass these few in terms of reputation. Everyone was like that, except for Su Ke. It would be hard for Cheng Jing not to notice him since he was so conspicuous. Su Ke and Mr. Jiang have known each other since they were young. Not only do they have a master-servant relationship, but they also share a youthful friendship. Logically speaking, Su Ke should have won the emperor's favor the most. Cheng Jing deliberately used the word emperor's favor. It was a fact that Ji Yi would ascend to the top in the future. Yet, the status he possessed did not match his reputation. It could be said that he had lost the emperor's favor and trust. But Mr. Jiang had handed over all the matters of the rear to him, almost betting his life on it. Who would dare to say that this was not trust? But to say that she trusted Su Ke, that was not entirely true. No matter how good Su Ke was at internal affairs, he was not only good at managing internal affairs, but he knew nothing about military affairs. He seemed to have never touched military power even once. If one were to say that he was good at it, Wei Ci was also good at internal affairs, but he followed the army year after year, running to this battlefield or that battlefield. While he controlled military power, it did not hinder him from managing government affairs. It was almost like he was doing both at the same time. As for Su Ke, Chapter 1825. Cheng Jing was sometimes confused. He didn't know what Jiang Pingji was thinking. Su Ke didn't lack status or merit. He only lacked a reputation that could intimidate others. Just like what Wei Ci asked earlier, Su Ke had always been loyal to Jiang Pingji, but she didn't let him go to the front line to make a name for himself. Would he be resentful? If it were Cheng Jing, he would be resentful. However, I don't think Su Ke resents this. So, the relationship between Jiang Pingji and Su Ke was very mysterious. As an outsider, Cheng Jing couldn't comment. Wei Ci hesitated and couldn't help but whisper. But, I think that with Su Ke's temperament, he won't be content with the rear. Even if he doesn't resent me, he should be dissatisfied. This is human nature. The experience in his previous life also proved this point. Su Ke was determined to repay his former lord for her kindness. No matter how well Her Majesty treated him later, Su Ke still secretly plotted a rebellion. He trapped Her Majesty in the steep mountains and forced her into a desperate situation. Even when the generals reacted and went to rescue her, they all thought that Her Majesty was dead because Su Ke had been lurking for too long. Of course, the ending was that Her Majesty killed all the troops in ambush and sat silently on a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. She killed Suka with her own hands and chopped off his head. Why did Suka not forget his former lord, and even give up a bright future? It was because his former lord appeared and trained him vigorously. She even gave Suka an important task that allowed him to walk out of the abyss. Suka valued his reputation very much. This point hadn't changed in his previous life. Wei Xi didn't suspect him at first. After all, Suka had been taking care of the rear all these years and worked hard for his lord. Who would suspect him? It wasn't until his lord's words before he left that Wei Xi realized that things might be more serious than he thought. He couldn't help but overturn all his previous guesses and put everyone on the list of suspects. On this basis, he asked himself a question. If these people wanted to rebel, who was the most likely to control the overall situation without causing chaos? It couldn't be Qiguan Rang, Yang Si Fengzhen, Han Yu Fu Wang, Li Yin, or Jiang Nongqin. These were all important ministers of the Lord. They had outstanding performances in certain aspects, but none of them could do this. Only Suka had this ability. He seemed inconspicuous, but he controlled all the lifelines. Even if the Lord suddenly died, as long as Suka did not fall, the foundation of the entire organization would not collapse. Whoever he supported would be able to stabilize the situation. From this angle, Suka was the most suspicious. But Wei Xi could not think of any solid evidence that could prove that Suka was a suspect. He had no reason to betray them. If it was because he didn't have the opportunity to make a name for himself, and make a name for himself in front of others, he could just mention it to his lord. Would the Lord be stingy with these few opportunities? Would she disregard the wishes of her subjects and forcefully imprison them in a domain, so that they would not be able to develop? How could this be? Back then, Han Yu was Su Pei's #1 strategist. He was good at dispatching troops to war, but he was more suitable for legislation and writing books. When the Lord supported him to develop in this direction, she also carefully sought Han Yu's opinion. Only then did Han Yu gradually reduce his activity at the front lines. But if he really wanted to go to the front lines, the Lord would not refute his request. Even Han Yu was like this, let alone Suka. Wei Xi was very conflicted. Jiang Pingji was in danger at the moment. He could not suppress his worry, but he had to control his bad habit of suspecting everyone. The more he couldn't suppress his suspicion, the more suspicious he was, and the more paranoid he became. Cheng Jing saw that Wei Xi's eyebrows were full of worry and asked, "You suddenly mentioned this. Is there something wrong with Suko?" Wei Xi smiled bitterly and said, "Maybe I'm being paranoid." There were contradictions and things wrong with Suko, but it was not enough to prove that he had betrayed them. If Suka found out that she made wild guesses without any evidence, the relationship between them would completely collapse, and they would never see each other again. Cheng Jing said, "It's not necessarily being paranoid." Wei Xi, he said meaningfully, "Lord Jiang seems to be on guard against Su Ke." Wei Xi's face turned pale. Cheng Jing said, "I've said before that Lord Jiang is the most perceptive. How could she not find out what Su Ke is missing? Based on her temperament, how could she tolerate her subordinates suffering such grievances? She has considered everyone, so there's no reason for her to skip Su Ke, who she should not have neglected." Wei Xi's heart skipped a beat, and his hands on his knees trembled slightly. Cheng Jing shook his head and said, "But as you said, there's no evidence. No matter how we speculate, it seems like we're being paranoid." The real solution to his doubts would have to wait until the moment when the mystery was revealed. "Zixiao, is something big going to happen recently?" Wei Xi raised his head and met his senior's eyes. For a moment, he felt like he was seen through, and all the secrets in his heart were exposed in front of him. He looked away unnaturally. "No. If it's really nothing, based on your temperament, how could you let your imagination run wild, and even suspect an important official like Su Ke?" Not everyone was as broad-minded as the sea. Some bottom lines should not be crossed. Once they were crossed, they would offend the other person to the utmost. Wei Xi could not understand this. The only possibility was that he had discovered something, and that was why he was distressed. Wei Xi still shook his head and refused to say another word. He had almost forgotten his senior's ability to see through people's minds and get information out of them. Choosing to talk to him today was a mistake. Cheng Jing said, "If you really have doubts, then don't let your guard down." Before leaving, Cheng Jing raised his hand and patted Wei Si's shoulder, encouraging him in a low voice. Compared to Su Ku, he trusted his junior brother more. Wei Si suspected that there was something wrong with Su Ku, so there must be some unspeakable reason. "Have you sent the things over?" Master Yuanjing was sitting in the corridor, helping his wife curl wool. When he heard that his eldest disciple had returned, he raised his head and asked, "Yes, they've been sent over. Looking at your expression, you seem to be troubled. Did something happen to your junior?" Cheng Jing did not want to reveal more about what Wei Si had said. He only said, "Recently, I've been learning about astronomical phenomena from my teacher, and I've had some enlightenment." What enlightenment? Tell me about it." Cheng Jing deliberated. "I'm afraid that Jiang Jun's road to becoming emperor is not very smooth." Master Yuanjing nodded and praised him. "Looks like he's learning well." Master's wife was angry. "What kind of treasonous words are you two talking about?" Master Yuanjing sighed. "I'm just saying that there were some twists and turns, not that he failed miserably. How can this be considered treasonous?" Master's wife snorted and snatched the ball of wool from him. She got up and went to the kitchen to see how the meal was being prepared, leaving them some space. "Teacher, you mean?" Master Yuanjing said. "The Emperor's star is indeed facing a murderous situation, but we should still believe in him. He's the child of destiny after all." Cheng Jing said, "If that's the case, why didn't you warn Jiang Jun to make early preparations?" Master Yuanjing curled his lips. The murderous situation was also set by Jiang Jun to wait for the tigers and wolves to enter. Why would I warn him? Cheng Jing was speechless. "I suddenly regret supporting you two brothers to enter officialdom. Having a ruler like this, life will not be easy if you have the slightest bit of disloyalty." It was not good to be too shrewd. Who knew when one would be tricked? Chapter 1826. Cheng Jing smiled and said, "Our juniors are all proud and arrogant. How can they be willing to serve a mediocre and incompetent leader?" Whether it was Wei Si, Yang Si, Han Yu Luzheng, or the other juniors who became officials one after another but were not well known, who didn't have the ambition to help the right path and make a name for themselves. Their reasons for becoming an official were different. Some wanted to bring honor to their ancestors. Some wanted to leave a good name for generations to come. Some wanted to cleanse the turbid world, and some simply wanted to practice their own morals. In the end, they all wanted to achieve the same goal. They wanted to realize their ideals, and needed a wise ruler with unparalleled talent. A mediocre ruler could not suppress these people. What Master Yuanjing said about the underwear was true. However, one was willing to be beaten, and one was willing to be beaten. Everyone was willing to be beaten. It would be a tragedy and misfortune if they entrusted their talents to a mediocre or even muddle-headed leader. Master Yuanjing muttered, "That's what you say, but Lord Jiang is different." Cheng Jing asked, "What's different?" Master Yuanjing smiled and said, "Everything is different." Cheng Jing complained in frustration, "Teacher, you're playing this kind of riddle with your student again." Master Yuanjing laughed. As his smile deepened, his smile lines became more prominent. He looked more and more like a sly old fox. "I made a prediction a while ago. Guess what I predicted?" Master Yuanjing pretended to make a prediction and tried to arouse his disciple's curiosity. However, his disciple had grown up and was not as gullible as when he was young. Master Yuanjing could only reveal the riddle. "In a few months at most, it will be a great opportunity for you to become an official. How about it? Are you happy? Disciple, are you ready?" Cheng Jing's face darkened slightly. He suddenly understood what Master Yuanjing was hinting at. When Huang Song was defeated and captured, Cheng Jing also became a prisoner. Jiang Pingji and Wei Si both wanted Cheng Jing to become an official. But Cheng Jing said that he wanted to wait for Jiang Pingji to prove that she was a legitimate genius. Master Yuanjing said so. Did it mean that the world was only united for a few months? He asked, "Is there really no change in Lord Zhang's ascension?" Master Yuanjing said, "The Emperor's star is attacked from both sides. The heavens are in chaos, and changes can happen at any time. However, Lady Jiang has come from a humble background to where she is today. Why don't we believe that she can win all the way? Those with perseverance will be able to achieve great things that ordinary people can't. Cheng Jing wanted to say something but stopped. Master Yuanjing smiled and stroked his beard. We are fortunate enough to be born in this era. It is truly a blessing to be able to witness her opening a new chapter in history as a witness. Cheng Jing looked at the smiling teacher and finally understood what the other party meant. Just watch the show and don't say anything. For some reason, Cheng Jing felt deep sympathy and worry for Jiang Pingji. Teacher, aren't you worried that if she loses, the world will really change? Master Yuanjing looked at the night sky and sneered. Life is short. I am an old man now. How many years do I have left to live? Even if the heavens really change, so what? When this master takes his last breath and is buried in the yellow earth, how can the dead care about the living? Cheng Jing. Smiley face. Angle. What he said sounded quite reasonable, but his disciples still had many years to live. They couldn't be at ease. He shouldn't have come to look for his master that day. If he hadn't looked for his master, he wouldn't have been ordered by his master's wife to deliver dried melon seeds to Wei Ci. If he hadn't delivered dried melon seeds, he wouldn't have been caught by Wei Ci to complain and hear such shocking news. If he hadn't heard such shocking news, he wouldn't have come back to chat with his master. If he hadn't chatted with his master, he wouldn't have felt uneasy. Epsilon equals omega asterisk, psi. Master Yuanjing also sighed like his students and said with emotion, let's just watch the deities fight. Maybe one day when they woke up, the deities would have finished fighting. Master Yuanjing knew some inside information, but it was limited to some. Other than being a spectator, he could do nothing else. In this regard, his attitude was the same as Lu Shi's. Even the words they spoke were the same. Cheng Jing. The ignorant and the knowledgeable were the happiest. The former didn't know anything, and naturally didn't need to worry. The latter knew everything, and didn't need to worry. The most pitiful was the one who didn't know anything. For example, he felt as if there were feathers tickling his heart. However, Master Yuanjing wasn't willing to reveal more. Cheng Jing could only sigh and be a spectator. As the saying goes, when deities fight, no one knows when it will start and when it will end. Smiley face. Angle. Then the question was, what was the point of letting him spy on the inside information? Other than pointless worry, was there any other practical use? The only use was probably to delay half a chapter, so that the author with terminal laziness could laze around for another day. Nene. Half a month later, the great Princess Jiang Lian walked more steadily. Not only could she jog 2 or 3 steps without falling, but she could also jump twice on the spot. That day, she was covered in dust from rolling outside. When she was tired, she was ready to harass her sister. As soon as she entered the house, she found that there was a white and chubby little thing next to her sister. The other party was clinging to her sister. Chapter 1827. For a moment, the 2 children's high and low cries came out of the hall, alarming Wei Ci who came to teach. What happened? As soon as Wei Ci came over, the first prince, who was howling loudly to suppress Feng Erlang, immediately stopped, got up and ran to Wei Ci. However, she only knew short and repetitive words, unable to accurately express the meaning of someone trying to snatch her sister. She was so anxious that her little face turned red. Wei Ci looked up and saw a strange boy in the hall. His expression froze. Who is this character? The maid said, the second Langjun of the Feng family. Wei Ci frowned. Feng Erlang? Feng Yu? Why is he here? His eyes fell on the sobbing boy who was silently crawling towards the second prince. His calm eyes seemed to be raging with a storm. The little guy seemed to feel it. He shrunk his shoulders and wanted to bury himself in the second prince's arms like an ostrich. However, he was dressed too much and looked white and fat. A 2-year-old child could not be covered by the second prince. Why is he here? The maid said with a strange expression. I don't know what happened to the second prince today. He was clamoring to go out of the front hall. As soon as he went out, he found Feng Erlang at the corner of the street. If it wasn't for his identity written on the longevity lock on his neck, I wouldn't have known who he was. The second prince seemed to find him interesting and dragged him back. After the first prince came back, perhaps he suspected that Feng Erlang was a criminal, so he made a fuss. Wei Xi lowered his eyes and asked, "Did you send someone to inform the Feng residence?" The maid said, "Yes, the Feng residence really lost Erlang." The servant who came to pick up the child was still waiting in the small room in the side hall, but the second prince refused to let him go. Wei Xi sneered, "Such a big residence, can't even watch over a 2-year-old child. Useless." The maid heard the word useless and was surprised. She would not be surprised if this word came from anyone's mouth, except Wei Xi. Wei Xi was famous for his good temper, and he was even more famous for being a gentleman. When would he say this? The second prince seemed to feel something and pointed to Feng Erlang. "Mine." The first prince was even more upset. The tears that he had just stopped fell again. The second prince came over and patted her head, comforting her. "You are also mine." The first prince's tears were like a faucet that stopped. She hugged the second prince and bared her teeth at Feng Erlang, who was curled up in a ball. She raised her chin slightly, as if showing off. "Look, this is her younger sister." Wei Xi's head hurt when he saw this, and the veins on his forehead bulged. His second daughter had a problem, and Feng Zhen's second son wasn't easy to deal with. Feng Zhen's mansion was 4 streets away from here. How did a 2-year-old child manage to get there? By rolling. Erlang Day. Today class. Feng Erlang was especially attached to the second prince, and vowed to share the same bed with her. The prince also saw the second, and wanted to occupy the seat. She was naturally domineering, and directly hugged the second prince. If Fingerling dared to approach, she would bare her teeth and threaten him with her fists. Feng the Ci and the Ci. Prince as the femme fatale, that the 2 naughty children were fighting over. The second prince showed an expression of despair. To be honest, the 2 babies were indeed very cute, but if they made too much of a fuss, they would become little devils. It was more comfortable to look at them when they were well behaved. So she patted Fingerling's head, and the child, who had tried to resist just now, immediately became obedient. "Stop fooling around. Let's go to class." The first prince glared at Feng Erlang, who was pretending to be obedient, and followed his sister to listen to the lesson. It was rare that the eldest prince did not fall asleep, even after Wei Xi's lecture ended. Instead, he used his childish and fierce gaze to guard against Feng Erlang. From the beginning to the end, Fingerling maintained an obedient, innocent, and pure expression. Wei Xi dismissed his servants and maids. The female official also sat outside the hall and waited. Wei Xi said coldly, "Does Feng Zhen know?" Feng Erlang blinked his eyes. The second prince sat upright, and the first prince was on his guard as usual. Wei Xi. Not a single response. Did they think he was performing a one-man show? After a long while, the second prince finally moved his butt and changed into a more comfortable sitting position. "He is my..." The second prince looked straight into Wei Xi's eyes. Although he did not speak fluently, his pronunciation was very clear. Wei Xi clenched the book in his hand. The second prince swallowed his saliva. He would salivate if he said a long sentence, so he had to stop and suck in his saliva halfway through to avoid embarrassment. "Child, did you hear that? The little brother under her protection." Feng Erlang, who was pretending to be innocent and well-behaved, straightened his chest. But because he leaned forward, the Empress Dowager's center of gravity shifted, and he accidentally fell backward and rolled twice. After a long while, Wei Xi sighed and asked, "Is there any danger?" The second prince said, My man, there is no danger." Wei Xi asked her again, "Does the Lord know?" The second prince nodded. Wei Xi said, "Fine, let him come over every day to accompany your highness to relieve your boredom." Speaking of which, his life had been magnificent. He had been reborn. In his previous life, his wife was the Empress, his eldest daughter was the Empress, and his second son had tried to force the Empress to abdicate. In this life, his wife was still the Empress, his eldest daughter would also become the next Empress, and his second daughter had a secret. The Yinyu couple was also not the original. Hearing the second prince's affirmative answer, Wei Si's first reaction was actually to rejoice. Feng Yu changed his core, and his eldest daughter from his previous life did not have to be cuckolded _smiley face. Angle _congratulations. The Yin-Yu couple was also stable, and the stock price rose delightfully. What the hell? Although he knew that the current Jiang Yan was not his daughter, after all, she had his blood. Even if she was not one, she was still half. He had not been guarding his half-daughter for long, and Feng Yu, the official wife, was haunting him. Don't think that you are not Feng Yu just because you changed your core. Sir. The second prince saw that Wei Si's expression was not very good, and could not help but ask with concern. If anything happened to Wei Si, Jiang Pingji would come back and chop her into pieces. Smiley face. Angle no, nothing, just a little heartache. He just remembered the psychological trauma that Feng Yu brought to him in his previous life. Wei Si waved his hand, and Feng Erlang felt a chill down his spine. He was so scared that he shrank his shoulders, and could not help but want to hide behind the second prince. The second prince said, "He is very cute." Wei Si was speechless. He could not tell, but he felt that he looked disgusting. The second prince patted Feng Erlang's head and gave him a look. Feng Erlang could only walk to Wei Si's side, shrunk his head, and did not speak. He wants to stay with you for a while. They were going to start a team battle, and he had to protect us. Otherwise, if the enemy took the first blood of us, our main damage output would collapse _smiley face. Angle Wei Si was puzzled, and he lowered his head to meet Feng Erlang's eyes. Feng Erlang was very timid, but he still bravely nodded. What's going on? Wei Si asked. The second prince touched the first prince's head. The soft hair felt so good. It's about to start. The second prince said meaningfully. He can protect you. Wei Si was speechless. He suddenly reached out his hand, and Feng Erlang was grabbed by the back of his collar. Feng Erlang, who was staring innocently, was speechless. Wei Si held the cute dumpling, and he doubted that he had heard wrong. Him. Protect me? Daily doubting life. JPG Wei Si had wasted all kinds of conspiracy theories and analysis testimonies for the past few days, but the result was such a funny beginning. Genius. 1 second to remember this website address. Mobile version M. Chapter 1828. Wei Si prided himself on being a man. How could he let a 2-year-old baby protect him? Ridiculous. What can you protect me with? Wei Si carried the cowardly and adorable Erlang from the Feng family. Hearing his gentle tone, it actually made the latter's hair stand on end. His pair of big eyes were instantly filled with hazy water vapor. His small mouth pouted and rolling tears fell down his face. Wei Si was speechless. He hadn't done anything yet. Why was this kid crying first? Wei Si couldn't help but put down Erlang of the Feng family. The kid cried and crawled quickly towards the second prince, hugging him and crying silently. The second prince raised his hand and patted his back, coaxing him in a low voice. Wei Si felt his teeth ache. He was indeed a hateful kid. In the previous life, Feng Yu had many tricks up his sleeve, but at least he was thick-skinned and knew his limits when it came to playing tricks. Now this fake was completely shameless. Even if he was wearing the skin of a 2-year-old, who knew how old an old ghost was inside? Did an old ghost have the nerve to cry while asking for comfort from a 1-year-old baby? The answer was yes. Erlang of the Feng family seemed to be addicted to playing the role of a child, asking for comfort, hugs and kisses at every turn. This is a black-hearted one. Wei Si concluded after watching for a while. Acting cute maliciously was too much. However, the second prince was a cute complex. He couldn't control himself when it came to cute things. He could even change his lazy work and rest habits in order to come into contact with cute things. Wei Si looked at the shameless Erlang of the Feng family. An idea flashed in his mind, and he couldn't help but sneer. Acting cute, right? No matter how cute he acted, he was still an old cucumber dipped in green paint. The surface was tender, but the inside was dry and devoid of water. How could he be more attractive than being naturally cute? On the second day of class, Wei Si had something in his sleeve that immediately attracted the second prince's attention. Erlang of the Feng family was tragically abandoned. Bye-bye. The first prince also pointed at the black and white ball in surprise. This is Black. Wei Xi's eldest daughter, Nan Nan, appeared. Not only could she cry, but she could also look at people with her dark, pure and innocent eyes, melting people. The first prince showed an unprecedented curiosity towards new things. The eyes of the usually lazy second prince also lit up. He took the initiative to get up from the mat and moved to the front of Wei Xi step by step. His eyes stared unblinkingly at the little darling in his arms. "Sir." The second prince blinked his bright eyes and said happily, "I want to play with it." The female official looked worriedly at the black and white ball in Wei Xi's hand. Even if it was just a cub, it was still an iron-eating beast that had followed Qiyu through many battles. They were worried that it would hurt His Highness. Wei Xi generously placed Darling in her arms. Before coming over, this black and white ball had already been carefully washed. At this moment its hair was shining. "Sir, I'm afraid His Highness won't be able to hold him." The maid watched nervously. Before she could finish her words, she saw the second prince holding the iron-eating beast cub, which was not much shorter than her. The iron-eating beast cub did not let Wei Xi down. It shyly covered its eyes with its paws and opened its mouth slightly, revealing its pink tongue. The eldest prince also came forward and carefully stroked the black and white ball's fur. The black and white ball had maintained its cub form for so many years. Its fur was not as rough as that of an adult, but very soft instead. "Yuan Yuan looks good." The iron-eating beast cub was indeed round, so the eldest prince called it Yuan Yuan. The cub was also very happy and responded with a whimper. Wei Xi smiled and stroked the two princes' hair bun. He gently advised, "It's time for class. After class, the two princes can play with it." The eldest prince thought it was good, but the second prince insisted on holding the cub to class. Darling was good-natured and let her pinch and rub it. Erlang of the Feng family, who had fallen out of favor, was speechless. Wei Xi smiled but did not say anything. Could Erlang of the Feng family be as cute as his daughter? No. In his lord's words, his daughter's cub was super invincible and cute. A human cub still wanted to compete with the national treasure in terms of cuteness. She really had no idea. Erlang of the Feng family would cry and whimper. But could his whimpers be as cute as Darling's daughter? Today's class was exceptionally comfortable. The two princes still had a longing expression on their faces after class. "Sir." The second prince hugged Darling tightly and gave Wei Xi a cute look with her eyes, trying to soften Wei Xi's heart and let Darling stay with her. However, Wei Xi was still rational and rejected her proposal. It was true that Darling was very obedient and did not hurt people. But she was indeed not suitable to be with the two princes for a long time, especially when Wei Xi was not around. She could not play alone. He was not afraid of anything else. He was only afraid that the two princes and Darling would be used and cause irreparable regret. Therefore, the stone-hearted Wei Xi hardened his heart and put Darling into his arms. Then, he took Erlang of the Feng family away by the collar. On the way, Erlang of the Feng family's expression was solemn, while Wei Xi's expression was joyful. "You are so childish." Sitting in the carriage, the 2-year-old Erlang of the Feng family criticized Wei Xi with a straight face. He looked fiercely at the panda in Wei Xi's arms. This human's operation was also very coquettish. He actually wanted to use the panda cub to divide his affection. How childish. Wei Xi was resting with his eyes closed. When he heard Erlang of the Feng family's childish criticism, he sneered. "The old man inside has the cheek to criticize me for being childish?" Erlang of the Feng family was not childish when he put on a child's skin and acted cute and spoiled to his second prince? But you are even more childish. Erlang of the Feng family and Wei Xi were considered familiar, but it was one-sided. When he was still living in Jiang Pingji's god-slaying sword, he was forced to watch Wei Xi and Jiang Pingji being intimate every day. The two also did things that were not suitable for children in front of him. Although he did not see it, he heard it. Whether Wei Xi was childish or not, he knew. Wei Xi sneered. "If you tell me the details, I won't be childish with you. Otherwise, the panda Darling would occupy the second prince's embrace for a long time, and would not have the status of his old love, Erlang of the Feng family." Erlang of the Feng family could not help but roll his eyes. He had seen people who liked to court death, But he had never seen someone who was in a hurry to court death. What's the hurry? Erling of the Feng family revealed a meaningful smile. When it happens, won't you know? When they were about to reach the mansion, Wei Ci asked him, Your Majesty, can you really handle it? Erling of the Feng family said, As long as you don't die, she won't lose. You are very important to her. Wei Ci revealed a puzzled expression. Erling of the Feng family said, That's why I have to protect you. Now this identity is just right to deceive people, and not arouse suspicion. Wei Ci was speechless. Not necessarily. When they got off the car, Wei Ci also grabbed Erling's collar. As Wei Ci entered the mansion, he could faintly hear him say, Protect? With a body that can be lifted up with one hand? Erling of the Feng family was speechless. Are you looking down on our milk baby's core? I'll show you my true identity, and scare you to death. Erling of the Feng family spat out a mouthful of milk paste angrily. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 1829. Just as Erling of the Feng family was trying his best to compete with Panda Darling for favor, the situation in Beiyuan became clearer. Feng Zhen persuaded the general of Beiyuan with his verbal rap. The two forces were at loggerheads on the surface, but in fact they were in cahoots. After a period of brewing, the public opinion that had been put into place had indeed reached the maximum limit of eruption. Under Feng Zhen's instructions, the general of Beiyuan sent his confidants to pretend to be ordinary people to spread the news and further promote public opinion. Public opinion spread from the military to the people, and from the people to the military, causing chaos in both circles. The general of Beiyuan watched everything uneasily, but at the same time, he felt a hidden ambition. Everything went exactly as Messenger Feng Zhen had said, without a single mistake. But he was still worried that a long delay would bring trouble. From time to time, he would ask Feng Zhen when to take action. Feng Zhen's patient guidance finally put the general's heart at ease. One day, the general who usually didn't get along with him suddenly came to drink with him. His words sounded like he was testing him. The general suddenly remembered Messenger Feng Zhen's guidance, and his dizzy mind cleared up a little. He followed Feng Zhen's instructions step by step to get information from the general. Sure enough, he got the truth out of him. The general said, I'm not satisfied with your words, but I know what you've done these days. You've also seen the situation today. The Yi family is cruel and tyrannical. It doesn't matter what we do, but we can't watch the people become like this. The general sneered in his heart. The general's political stance was not on the same page as his. He usually liked to play up to the rich and bully the people. Such a terrible person actually dared to use the banner of for the good of the people. He was really shameless. Oh, what will you do? The general said in a low voice. General, have you contacted the other side? The general knew which side the other side was. The general would find clues, and the general had deliberately leaked the news. However, the general still had to pretend to be deaf and dumb to test if the general was serious about rebelling. The general laughed. General, don't be afraid. I feel the same as you. I can't stand the Yi family's cruelty and want to plead for the people of Beiyuan to welcome the true emperor. However, General, you're still too careful. You can't control the entire border by yourself. The defending general sneered. What do you intend to do? The deputy general said. This general is willing to be the general's vanguard and fulfill your long-cherished wish. Discerning people all knew that Beiyuan couldn't hold on any longer. Who knew the situation of military provisions and supplies better than the soldiers? Beiyuan could not resist the enemy's 250,000 iron hoofs. Many speculators had already started looking for their next target, and Jiangpingji was undoubtedly their only target. Unfortunately, they wanted to seek refuge, but had no way to do so. They scratched their ears and cheeks, and the deputy general was one of them. Just as he was worrying about this, he realized that his superior, the garrison general, had some unusual movements. It seemed to have something to do with Jiangpingji. That was why he took the initiative to look for him, hoping to get in touch with him and get some credit for helping him become a dragon. Beiyuan would be lost sooner or later. Those who pledged their allegiance to Jiangpingji first would naturally be more important, When Jiang Pingji used force to break through the gates of the Beiyuan kingdom, the captives would be prisoners. It was better to plan a way out for himself, so that he could be a high-ranking official when he was with Jiang Pingji. At the very least, they would be able to maintain their current status. The garrison general then asked him, "What proof do you have?" The deputy general leaned close to the garrison general's ear and whispered a few words. After the two looked at each other, they revealed a tacit smile. The deputy general's pledge of allegiance was a signal. More and more people took the opportunity to change sides. The garrison general saw that the time was ripe. Under Feng Zhen's instructions, he held a banquet and invited all the important generals to drink and discuss important matters. After 3 rounds of drinking, the garrison general scolded the Yi family for being cruel and tyrannical. The generals kept quiet out of fear. "Everyone, why don't you follow me and rebel against the Yi family?" He pulled out his sword and looked at the crowd with bloodshot eyes. Those who had colluded with him all agreed. A few generals from the Yi family's faction were enraged. They pulled out their swords and scolded the garrison general for his treason. In the end, before they could finish their words, their heads were chopped off by the people beside them. The banquet that had been filled with toasts and toasts 15 minutes ago was now covered in blood. A few heads rolled on the ground. The garrison general sent someone to collect the heads as a gift for the opening of the city the next day. A mutiny was carried out quietly. When many low-ranking soldiers woke up, the flags on the city walls were uniformly changed. The flags fluttered in the wind and snow. The unfamiliar patterns of the tribe's emblem stood tall on the land of the Beiyuan. Not long after, the news of the loss of the border flew to the Beiyuan, as if it had wings. Jiang Pingji took advantage of the high morale on her side and sent troops to attack 3 passes in a row. The morale of the people in the Beiyuan was completely destroyed. At this time, the public opinion among the people had reached a boiling point. More and more people knew that the outside world could no longer tolerate the atrocities of the Yi family in the Beiyuan. At this time, the news of Jiang Pingji's strict management of the army, after the city was breached, the news of not burning, looting, disturbing the people, and not slaughtering captives also spread. More and more people gathered and wanted the garrison soldiers to open the city gates and surrender to Jiang Pingji. Lord Jiang didn't come to attack the Beiyuan. She came to eradicate the malignant tumor of the Yi family and save our people. The harsh governance of the Beiyuan was a sharp contrast to the benevolent governance Jiang Pingji implemented in Dongqing. The people's nerves had long been suppressed to the bottom. At this time, when Jiang Pingji attacked the Beiyuan, they all rebounded. Most of the garrison soldiers were old, weak, sick, and disabled. How could they resist the people who had lost control of their emotions? After Jiang Pingji attacked 3 passes in a row, there were people who opened the gates and surrendered at every place. Occasionally there was resistance, but it was like cutting tofu with a knife. The 250,000 troops rushed all the way to the capital of the Beiyuan. Under the seemingly harmonious situation, there was a surge of disharmony. Jiang Pingji couldn't let the aristocrats of the Beiyuan go. She sent people to mix among the people and stir up their resentment. She instigated them to attack the houses of the aristocrats and loot. The soldiers who were mixed in took the opportunity to harvest all the heads. When Jiang Pingji received the message for help and hurriedly sent troops to rescue them, the rebels had long dispersed. The unlucky ones were completely annihilated. The lucky ones still had a few people left. Our Lord's methods are really becoming more and more like an emperor. In half a month, they conquered half of the Beiyuan and killed tens of thousands of enemies. 60% of them were the so-called aristocrats of the Beiyuan. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Feng Zhen really couldn't imagine that the 2 words aristocrats were so cheap. Every household had a scale of hundreds or thousands of people. Were the people of the Beiyuan all breeding pigs? How could they have so many children? What made him even more emotional was the Lord. She didn't have the slightest bit of soft-heartedness. She directly killed them. In the end, she even put all the blame on the refugees. No one had any evidence to suspect her. Who asked them to bully the people so ruthlessly? It was reasonable for the people to aim their angry butcher's knife at them. Qiguan Rang said indifferently, "She is an emperor. One and only." Genius in a second. Remember this site's address. Mobile version. Chapter 1830. Even when the city was under siege, there were still people wandering in a drunken stupor. Urgent reports of defeat were sent to the capital city and into the ears of those in power. Some people were worried about their future, while others were enjoying the time they had left and squandered their remaining time. The Emperor of Baiyuan was undoubtedly the former. He was worried about the future of Baiyuan, but he was more worried about the fate of the Yi family. In order to save the situation, he had tried his best, but in the end, he was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Get out, all of you! The huge pressure made him lose control of his emotions. The palace maids and imperial concubines screamed in fear, which made him even more annoyed. He pulled out his sword and stabbed it into the chest of his beloved concubine, who was closest to him. He watched her slowly fall to the ground with her hand over her heart, and the mat under her was covered with blood. Only then did he regain some calmness. This was not the first time such a situation had happened. As the war became more serious, the enemy marched straight in and conquered one city after another of the North Abyss. This ambitious Emperor Yi went crazy, and his temperament became even more ruthless and cruel than before. The imperial concubines did not dare to come close to him at this time. Who knew when he would go crazy and stab himself to death? Now this beloved concubine was also unscrupulous in order to climb up. Unfortunately, the emperor was in a bad mood, so he killed her to vent his anger. Get out, all of you! The emperor killed another 2 palace maids with his sword, and then he completely calmed down. Because of the emperor's antics, the originally warm palace gave people a bone-piercing chill. At this time, the eunuch serving the emperor came forward to deliver something. The emperor saw it and hurriedly asked him to serve it. It was called immortal powder. It was rare and precious. After taking it, one would feel refreshed and revitalized. It could also stimulate inspiration and relieve stress. Recently, the emperor had a headache because of Jiang Pingji's attack on Baiyuan, so he became more and more dependent on the immortal powder. After taking the immortal powder, the irritable emperor was like a placated tiger. He lazily lay on the dragon throne, looking dreamy and comfortable. The palace maids and eunuchs were secretly relieved to see that. The emperor could calm down for a few hours after taking the immortal powder. During these hours, there was no need to worry that he would go crazy and kill people. Of course, that was not enough. After a quarter of an hour, the emperor's face was flushed, and his breath was hot. He uncomfortably pulled his collar, and the thing 3 inches below his navel stood up energetically. Come! The eunuch, who was in charge of the attendants, looked around and fixed his eyes on a beautiful palace maid. He casually pointed and signaled for her to come forward and serve. The immortal powder had been popular in Baiyuan for a long time, and it was a must-have for many men. As mentioned before, Baiyuan aristocratic families were crazy about reproduction, not to mention pampering their wives and concubines every day. They wished they could pamper 7 or 8 wives and concubines in one night and impregnate them. However, if they did too many of these things, they would not be able to do it. Faced with the predicament of kidney deficiency, they began to take the immortal powder in order to regain their masculinity. Just by sticking to it, a man's self-esteem would be restored. Not only would he feel refreshed and quick-witted, but he would also be able to stand firm in bed. Emperor Yi had been using the immortal powder for a few years now, and was increasingly reliant on it. After taking the immortal immed of the a of and of emperor, or of people of and of the emperor of Chung of palace. Sometimes he would hold a banquet to reward his officials, and he would allow them to enjoy his unconceived concubines. Of course, the Yi family had done a lot of ridiculous things during his reign. The palace maid named by the eunuch was only 13 or 14 years old, but she did not dare to resist. She could only step forward timidly. After a while, screams of pain spread throughout the palace. The eunuch who made the arrangements was still indifferent, but he murmured, "Poor thing. What a sin." It was not only the Yi family's sin, but also their minions. In such a chaotic environment, Those who still had conscience could only choose to go along with the evil to protect themselves. Those who refused to obey had died a long time ago. An hour later, the dying palace maid was put in a sack and carried out of the palace. The eunuch who served the emperor entered. "What time is it now?" The emperor looked lazy, and there was an inexplicable decadence between his eyebrows. The eunuch answered obediently. The emperor snorted and put on his clothes with the help of the eunuch. "Go! Summon the ministers and discuss how to fight against the enemy." The emperor yawned. The growing drowsiness made him very uncomfortable, but he still had to pull himself together to deal with political affairs. In fact, there was no good solution even after the discussion. The treasury of Baiyuan was empty, and the armaments were shabby. There was no decent army to stop the enemy's advance. The emperor said discontentedly, "So what if the treasury is empty when the country's survival is at stake?" The ministers couldn't help but grumble. Even a fool wouldn't ask this question. If the treasury was empty, and there was no money to equip the army, who would go to war and die? There were too many ministers in the Baiyuan imperial court. They usually shared the benefits, but when it was really necessary for them to give advice, they all dropped the ball. The emperor's meaning was clear. If the treasury was empty, let the ministers take out their wealth to form an army to fight against the enemy. Seeing that the ministers pretended not to know, the emperor's anger rose again. "All of you are the ministers who receive the salary of Baiyuan. Now that the country is in danger, there is nothing you can do?" Since the hint didn't work, he would just say it directly. The emperor reprimanded the ministers angrily, trying to make them take out their wealth to fill the gap. How could the ministers agree to that? Jiang Pingji had almost conquered half of Baiyuan in such a short time. Could they still fight back in a desperate situation? The destruction of Baiyuan was a foregone conclusion. Even if they took out their wealth, it would be like throwing meat buns at a dog. Only fools would bet their wealth on the broken ship of Baiyuan. It wouldn't be as simple as being trapped. Maybe even the lives of the whole clan would be sacrificed. No matter what the emperor said, the ministers were playing Tai Chi and feigning civility. In the end, the furious emperor drew his sword and killed a few ministers who were not pleasing to the eye. Under the threat of their lives, a few ministers finally relented and said they would go back to raise money and grain. As soon as they left the palace, their expressions changed. Emperor Yi was completely crazy. There was no future for him to continue to follow such a tyrant. It was better to follow Jiang Pingji. If they followed Jiang Pingji, even if they couldn't maintain their current status, they had a strong foundation and wouldn't have to worry about wealth and glory for the rest of their lives. These aristocratic families were blood-sucking worms that sucked the blood of Baiyuan dry. How could they not have a strong foundation? It was too rich. When Jiang Pingji heard that the emperor had secretly sent people to confiscate the property they had collected, even she, who was experienced and knowledgeable, was a little surprised. A small aristocratic family actually had all kinds of items that only the emperor could use. There was even more gold and silver. I thought Zhongzhou was the rich ones. I didn't expect the real rich ones to be these rubbish chickens. Jiang Pingji sneered and threw the account book aside. The idea of killing the rich ones to enrich the private treasury became stronger. The account book made her even more determined to wipe out the aristocratic families of Baiyuan. However, the aristocratic families of Baiyuan always had a lower limit. Jiang Pingji could broaden her horizons every time. Genius remembered the address of this website in a second. Mobile version. Chapter 1831. Even animals know that I am alive, and those who gave birth to me will not be humiliated. These people sure know how to play. Feng Zhen listened to his subordinate's report and couldn't help but reveal an expression that said, "I've learned something new." Qiguan Rang sneered and said, "When there are so many people, all kinds of monsters will come out." The father humiliated the daughter. The daughter had an affair with her own uncle. The brother and sister were indescribable. As long as it was a man and a woman, they would be able to form a pair. How were they humans? They were clearly a group of beasts in human skin. Jiang Pingji said, "Get someone to pack these things up and throw them to Zixiao in the future." Qiguan Rang and Feng Zhen were stunned for a moment. These things that even they felt were dirty to their eyes, were thrown to Wei Ci. Could it be that the Lord also wanted to play the forbidden role with Zixiao? Jiang Pingji snorted. What are you all thinking about? I said I'd throw them to Zixiao, because I wanted to give them to his subordinates, so they could have more material to write about. If they dare to do it, I dare to brand their names in the annals of unofficial history for the rest of their lives. This can also be considered as immortalized and recorded in the annals of history. Humph, very interesting. Qiguan Rang and Feng Zhen were speechless. His lord really knew how to play. If she really did that, those aristocrats wouldn't be able to live in peace even if they went to the underworld. The messy affairs of the family had been used as material to be written in erotic books for future generations to learn and enlighten them. If their ancestors in heaven knew that their family's reputation had been ruined by their descendants, wouldn't they be so angry that they would come back to life? He would most likely be angered to death. After another 2 days, Feng Zhen mysteriously asked Jiang Pingji to take a look at something. What are you looking at? Jiang Pingji had been very busy recently. It was not difficult to conquer Beiyuan. The difficult part was how to appease the people of Beiyuan and win their hearts. To put it bluntly, the food supply was not in place. She also made a note of the vacancies, so that it would be easier for manpower to fill them. At a time like this, Feng Zhen didn't share her burdens and worries. He even said he wanted to take her to see something. Jiang Pingji frowned. Although that was what he said, his actions were still very honest. Feng Zhen had people carry over 3 large chests. When they opened them, they found that they were filled with dazzling gold, silver, and jewelry. Did you plunder someone else? Feng Zhen smiled and said, That's not true. Someone secretly delivered it to us yesterday. There's also a letter here. Jiang Pingji took it and read it carefully. She couldn't help but feel angry after reading a few lines. The people of Beiyuan. The battle in Beiyuan was too painful. All kinds of experiences made her realize that this country was rotten to the core. However, they were still able to lower their limits, which was an eye-opener for her. What does my lord think? Feng Zhen picked up a rather hefty piece of gold. A gold biscuit was worth 7 or 8 taels. Even though the purity of the gold refined in this era was not high, it was still enough to make one's jaw drop. Who knew how many gold coins there were in these 3 chests? The gold biscuits were the cheapest, and there were 6 or 7 luminous pearls. Feng Zhen was tempted by the paintings and books of famous artists from different dynasties. However, he couldn't keep these things to himself. He didn't want his lord to settle scores with him in the future. Jiang Pingji sneered. What else can I do? Our army is strong and powerful. Even if we don't cooperate with them, we can still conquer the entire Beiyuan. They thought too highly of themselves. In fact, what the hell was all this? Did they really think that the Emperor of Beiyuan and I were the same kind of people, and could be played like puppets? Didn't they think about their own situation? Did they think they had the right to bargain with me? Feng Zhen felt that what his lord said made sense. When he received the bribes and secret letters, he also thought that those people were crazy. They couldn't see themselves clearly at all. They actually talked terms with Jiang Pingji, and hinted that she would give them high positions and generous salaries. Hee. It was already kind enough to give them a mat to bury their bodies after they died. Apart from you, who else received bribes? Feng Zhen laughed. I'm not sure about that. Jiang Pingji rubbed her brows and waved her hand. Keep these paintings and antiques if you like them. Don't touch the rest. Feng Zhen's eyes brightened. He bowed in thanks. What was the value of gold and silver? These paintings and antiques were priceless. Feng Zhen even saw the paintings of a senior idol in them. Not long after, Qiguan Rang also sent a few chests to Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji also asked Qiguan Rang to keep the paintings and antiques. The gold, silver, and jewelry inside were confiscated. Apart from them, a few others also received bribes of varying amounts. A few of them reported it to Jiang Pingji honestly. A few of them kept it a secret, and some of them did not even report it to the higher-ups. They all thought that Jiang Pingji didn't know. Little did they know that Jiang Pingji only looked at their behavior coldly. Only Qiguan Rang and a few others knew that the few who secretly bribed would stop there for the rest of their lives. They had to be careful not to make mistakes for the rest of their lives. Otherwise, What awaited them was their lord's revenge. When it came to holding grudges, Qiguan Rang, Yang Si, and Feng Zhen combined couldn't compare to Jiang Pingji. They never expected that Jiang Pingji would also receive bribes. Jiang Pingji looked at the emissary coldly. What do you mean? She racked her brains to think that Beiyuan would use such a trick. Were they preparing to kill her with such a trick? She had actually offered 32 handsome men in an orderly manner. The older ones were already in their 20s. The younger ones were only 12 or 13. The only thing they had in common was that they were good-looking. Very good-looking. Jiang Pingji didn't need to look at them carefully to know that they were good-looking. Didn't they see that the bullet screen in the livestream room was boiling? These salted fishes were experienced and knowledgeable. To be able to make them boil, one could see how good-looking these men were. Tizke, Jiang Pingji sneered coldly in her heart. Looking at Duo Zixiao's peerless beauty, these salted fishes could actually accept these pretentious, vulgar men. Their aesthetic standards needed to be improved. Faced with Jiang Pingji's mockery, one of the salted fishes spoke the truth. Potato chips. No matter how good Zixiao is, he's already taken. Moreover, these men are young and handsome. Jiang Pingji. Very good. She would never eat potato chips again in her life. You don't have to explain. Jiang Pingji rubbed her brows and said, bring all of them back. If you insist on staying, that's fine. Before the emissary could reveal a joyful expression, Jiang Pingji said again, leave one, I'll kill one myself. The royal family of Beiyuan is immoral, but I'm enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. Let's fight. There's no room for nonsense. If your country's emperor still has a sense of shame, please tell him. First cultivate his virtue, then cultivate his heart. You've lost the hearts of the people, yet you don't repent and reflect on yourself. Instead, you use such a disgusting method to disgust people. It's really an eye-opener for me. The Xichang emperor only sent a pair of children, but the royal family of Beiyuan was arrogant. They sent 32 men in one go. 32 good men who don't want to join the army and serve the country, but come to me to flatter and wag their tails. Humph. Jiang Pingji's words were not polite at all. Feng Zhen and the others who were listening couldn't help but laugh. If they were the emissary and were humiliated like this, they would have pulled out their swords and committed suicide long ago. Chapter 1832. Being weak and barren is the original sin. Qiguan Rang watched coldly as the messenger was reprimanded by his lord and ridiculed by his colleagues. This messenger was obviously extremely sad and ashamed, but he could only show a flattering smile. The messenger was not a fool. How could he not know what kind of humiliation he would suffer by coming here? He knew what kind of situation it was, but he still came and had to come. The reason was that Beiyuan was too weak, so he had to come. Because it was weak, the messenger sent here had no dignity, and could only be humiliated by others. Feng Zhen said, being weak and barren is a sin, but we did not bring this sin to them. Serves you right for asking for it. As one of the 5 countries in the world, if Beiyuan managed it well, it might be able to dominate the north and observe the world. Who asked Beiyuan to take the wrong path from the beginning? No, it should be said that their rulers could not restrain their greed, and played a good hand to pieces. If any of them had restrained themselves and prioritized the country, instead of putting selfishness first, Beiyuan would not have ended up like this. However, it was easy for him to say these words now. Were all the people in Beiyuan blinded by greed? At the end of the day, it was just bad money driving out good money. Those who still had a conscience could only choose to follow in the mire to protect themselves. The more people who followed in the mire, the larger the group, the faster the foundation of Beiyuan would be corroded. Even if some people knew that Beiyuan would be digging its own grave if it went on like this, who dared to stand up and say it? Those who dared to say it were either mute or dead. Everything that happened to Beiyuan, wasn't it also what Dongqing, Nanxing and Zhongzhou had experienced? However, the last 3 countries were completely free, because someone used violence to cut off the rotten roots from the main trunk. But Beiyuan was still sinking. Qiguan Rang did not sympathize with the messengers of Beiyuan, who were ridiculed and embarrassed by the crowd at all. Instead, he felt that this was the retribution they deserved. According to the Lord's previous words, during an avalanche, no snow was innocent. Similarly, when the Beiyuan collapsed, none of these officials were innocent. Was there any difference between choosing silence and following in the mire? In essence, there was no difference. They were all executioners who pushed Beiyuan to the end. This envoy was also an official of the Beiyuan court. Now that he was groveling at the feet of the Lord in such a lowly manner, wasn't he deserved it? When the crowd dispersed, the emissary led the 32 handsome men away in embarrassment. Qiguanrang saw that the emissary's expression was sad and indignant but helpless. There seemed to be tears at the corner of his eyes. Seeing this, Qiguanrang sneered and waved the feather fan in his hand even more cheerfully. He liked to see his enemies struggling in desperation. It made him happy. Just as he was thinking, he heard the crunching sound of snow being stepped on. Qiguanrang didn't need to turn around to know who the footsteps belonged to. He turned around and bowed to Jiang Pingji. "What is Wenjing looking at?" Jiang Pingji followed Qiguanrang's line of sight and looked over. She could faintly see a small messenger. Qiguanrang remarked, "A few pitiful stray dogs." Jiang Pingji looked at him and corrected Qiguanrang seriously. "It can't be a stray dog, right? It's obvious that they're the dogs of a defeated country." Qiguanrang smiled delightfully. Jiang Pingji said, "Wenjing, do you think I'm a vile person who is intoxicated by success?" Qiguanrang replied, "My lord is a woman, not a vile person. My lord is the victor, and the victor has the right to write history. It's not an exaggeration to say that you are successful. The country is about to perish. People in troubled times are worse than dogs. Which of the 4 words, stray dogs of a country, is wrong? When I heard the conversation between you and Zishir just now, I thought you were feeling sorry for the messenger, who was humiliated and ridiculed and felt sad. That's why I came here to enlighten you." Jiang Pingji smiled as if she was telling the truth. "I don't know enough about Wenjing. Wenjing's breadth of mind is different from ordinary people. It's also my fault for judging Wenjing from the perspective of an ordinary man." Qiguanrang laughed. "No one understands me as well as my lord." Jiang Pingji suddenly changed the topic. "Looking at the situation, Beiyuan will be in our hands before the beginning of spring." Qiguanrang nodded in agreement and tacitly ignored the previous topic with Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji said, "Wenjing is not only an important minister to me, but also a close friend." When Qiguanrang heard this, he vaguely felt that something was wrong. Jiang Pingji continued, "Between close friends, we naturally hope that each other can be safe and live a better life. It's the same for me." Qiguanrang asked her, "What do you want to say, my lord?" Jiang Pingji said, "If one day you find something wrong with me, don't make a sound. Take care of yourself." She raised her hand and patted Qiguanrang's shoulder, revealing her usual smile, as if she was saying that the weather was good today. Qiguanrang was shocked. He wanted to say something but stopped. "Just remember it in your heart." Jiang Pingji interrupted what he wanted to say. "I know that Wenjing hates the people of Beiyuan. They choose to be in cahoots with others, or remain silent in the face of the country's crisis. Therefore, when the evil power reacts on themselves, they should bear it. However, there are different views from different perspectives. If silence can protect the safety of themselves and their families, many people will still choose to be silent. Was the country important? It was far more important than life, but relatives and family were also very important. Some people sacrificed their lives for the country, while others struggled at death's door for their families, and chose to be in cahoots with others. Jiang Pingji used to think that black was black and white was white, but when she really faced such a situation, she realized that she was just an ordinary person. If something happened to her, she hoped that Qiguanrang and the others would put their own safety first. Silence was also a means of self-protection. For the first time, Qiguanrang lost control and grabbed Jiang Pingji's hand. He used so much strength that he completely forgot the difference between a ruler and a minister. "My lord, what do you mean by this?" Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "Make arrangements in advance. Maybe it will be useful." Qiguanrang took a deep breath and said, "This kind of arrangement? How do you expect me to accept it?" Jiang Pingji said, "I'm just preparing for the worst. I will try my best to prevent it from happening. Wenjing should have confidence. Qiguan Rang looked at Jiang Pingji with slightly red eyes. The little bit of joy he felt just now was gone. He was originally looking forward to the day his feet set foot in the capital of Beiyuan, but now he felt that he had lost interest. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, I am the chosen one by Wenjing. You should believe that I can sweep away all obstacles, and no one can stop me. Qiguan Rang said, Yes, that's true. A brave person should move forward with indomitable will. But the Lord had given him some funeral arrangements. What did this mean? It meant that this brave person was also confused and hesitant about the future. She was not sure if she could win. Because of this worry, she gave her funeral arrangements and prepared for the worst. How could Qiguan Rang not be worried? My lord, do you know what my only wish in this life is? What is it? Qiguan Rang said. I want to see you with my own eyes. Only you. Ascend to the throne and rule over the world. No one but you. Chapter 1833. After another month, there was good news from Xichang. Fu Wang's battle was very boring, really very boring. There was a feeling that Dongqing, Zhongzhao, and Nanxing were trying their best to create a scene of chaos. But Xichang was just playing house. When he first received the military conscription order, Fu Wang was very excited. He thought that he could show off his skills, make countless contributions, and defeat the enemy. But in the end, he solemnly issued a military order to his lord, and brought more than 200,000 soldiers to conquer Xichang. He thought that there would be a hard battle, but in the end, Xichang's operations were beyond his imagination. The army conquered the border of Xichang, killed a group of bandits, and destroyed 2 villages. When they captured the captives and interrogated them, they said that they were the emperor. Emperor? Fu Wang looked at the bandit emperor in confusion. He was dressed in hemp and gray cloth. When he captured someone and interrogated them, they said that they were the prime minister. Prime minister? Bah! A bandit village has 200 people, and half of them have official positions. Why don't you go to heaven? When Fu Wang heard that the emperor made a dark-faced shrew empress, and a widow in her 40s his favorite concubine, his expression could no longer be described with words. Even children don't play house so casually. Aren't you adults ashamed of yourselves? This was not what made Fu Wang feel the most hopeless. Not long after the 200,000-strong army invaded Xichang, they received envoys from several forces. After careful questioning, the larger ones only had half a province, and the smaller ones had 1,000 to 2,000 people. The smaller ones had big ambitions. Some called themselves feudal lords, and some had already proclaimed themselves emperors. They hoped that Fu Wang would leave their land in the name of the country. If he didn't leave, there would be serious consequences if the 2 countries became enemies. Fu Wang was just a commander. He couldn't bear the responsibility. Fu Wang was speechless. Could these people not live in their own world and keep on blabbering? Why couldn't he bear the responsibility? His lord had given him more than 200,000 elites to be fully in charge of the war here. He could even capture the emperor and kill him first before reporting. His lord had delegated power like a flood. Why didn't Fu Wang have the right to bear the responsibility? They don't know what they're talking about. Lead the troops and flatten them. One word, beat him up mother****. There was no need to talk about anything else when it came to war. The moment Fu Wang spoke, the arrogant fellows scattered like birds and beasts. In order to resist Fu Wang's army, it was said that Xichang had organized 100 feudal vassals' oath ceremony to resist Fu Wang's attack. 100 feudal vassals, a general assembly? No, back then, when his lord participated in the Huang River Conference, the 20 or so feudal vassals were already enough. Xichang was not bad, 100 feudal vassals. This title sounded awesome, and Fu Wang had been looking forward to it for 2 days at first. It was only when the fight really started that he realized that the other party was just a piece of paper. It wasn't that the enemy didn't have enough troops. In fact, the 100 feudal vassals had gathered 400,000 soldiers and horses to confront Fu Wang across the river. However, a war wasn't won just because they had more people. To say that the enemy's 400,000 soldiers and horses were scattered like sand would be a compliment. The various feudal vassals were not united. Each had their own little schemes. Each fought their own battles. Fu Wang led his troops and defeated them as soon as they met face to face. Then, the enemy gave up resisting and began to run for their lives. To be honest, even the extras weren't so perfunctory. In this battle, Fu Wang created a world record that would be famous in later generations. The record of killing the leaders of the feudal vassals in one battle. Fu Wang completed 44 kills by himself. Smiley face. Angle. The so-called 100 feudal vassals had been eliminated by him in one go. It was a title that sounded awesome, but Fu Wang couldn't be happy. He felt that his intelligence and military talent were being ruthlessly rubbed against the ground by these enemies. Just by rubbing against him, he would lose some of his intelligence. Would he become mentally retarded after this battle? The 100 feudal vassals of Xicheng spent 2 months to gather the 400,000 troops, but it only took 4 hours for them to collapse. After a deeper understanding, Fu Wang deeply understood how overboard his lord was. He would rather lead the troops to attack the North Yuan. At least the enemy wouldn't be so retarded, right? Of course, Jiang Pingji only chuckled at this. The intelligence of the North Yuan wasn't very high. Jiang Pingji only needed to watch the enemy court death and then guard their corpses. There weren't many times when she had to properly set up a battle formation to fight a battle. No matter how bad Fu Wang was, he still managed to get the title of 44 kills and saw the grand occasion of the 100 feudal vassals attacking Fu Wang. What did Jiang Pingji have? Snow. The sky was full of snow, freezing people to death. Smiley face. Angle. Report. Fu Wang rubbed his brows and said, "What now?" The soldier who reported the news said that the scouts had caught a group of suspicious people who claimed to be the emperor of Xicheng. Fu Wang was speechless. It might be hard to believe, but Fu Wang had gathered the 6 imperial pills not long ago. Did another person want to achieve the achievement of summoning the dragon god? Another bunch of bluffs. Just drag them out and kill them. What kind of person claimed to be an emperor? Was the word emperor so cheap? Fu Wang had always hoped that his lord could ascend to the throne. But in the end, the emperor was so cheap. He felt suffocated just thinking about it. In the end, the emperor this time was not ordinary. What is this? Fu Wang opened the item presented by the soldier and saw a jade seal. Interesting. The jade seals of the previous emperors were either made of wood, granite, or cheap and low-quality jade. The quality of this jade seal looks pretty good. As a boorish man, Fu Wang did not know much about anything other than war. When he chose his spoils of war, he would choose the biggest, brightest, and best-looking ones, or simple and crude gold and silver treasures. He did not know much about jade, but he felt that this jade seal was of good quality. As for how good it was, he could not tell. So, when the people around him told him that this jade seal was of excellent quality and was very likely to be a real jade seal, he was dumbfounded. Drag the person here and interrogate him. Where did he steal this jade seal? If he did not ask, he would not know. Once he asked, his 3 views were all shattered. The person who was captured was indeed the emperor of Xicheng, the real emperor of Xicheng. Accompanying him were his empress and his ministers. Fu Wang stared at the person for a long time, but could not see the so-called aristocratic temperament. Looking left and right, did he not look like a farmer doing farm work? The empress beside him also had wrinkled skin and white hair. Her hands were frostbitten, and her fingertips were cracked and had thick calluses from farm work. If this was really the royal family, Fu Wang could understand why there were more than 100 feudal lords in Xicheng. To many people, the royal family was a religion. With such a collapse of religion, how could order not collapse? The emperor earned money from farming, the palace earned pocket money from farming, and the concubines were sold to disharmonious places to earn money from their bodies. The so-called ministers in villages with less than 100 households were involved in domestic trifles. Wait, what happened to the jade seal? They were so poor. Fu Wang did not believe that they would not pawn the jade seal to pay back the money. The emperor of Xicheng stammered as he explained. They had taken advantage of the time when Fu Wang was harvesting the heads to send the guards to retrieve it. The jade seal was the symbol of the emperor. With the jade seal, he might be able to trick some people to get close to him. Fu Wang. The Battle of Xichang was probably a stain that he would never be able to erase in his life. Genius in a second, remember this site's address. Mobile version. Chapter 1834. Because of the uniqueness of Xichang, Fu Wang's army had been advancing triumphantly all this while. It was unbelievably smooth. Every time Fu Wang read the battle report, he felt like he was daydreaming. Xichang was a country after all. How could it be so fragile? Why would a country be divided into hundreds of pieces, each ruling their own affairs and fighting their own wars? Was he worried that the enemy's stomach would not be able to digest it? So he took the initiative to cut it into small pieces? He had clearly won, but Fu Wang had the illusion that he was going bald. I'm bald from worry. This kind of victory came too easily. Even playing house did not dare to be so casual. Isn't that good? Meng Hun couldn't understand Fu Wang's train of thought. Fu Wang wanted his enemy to be as stupid as a retard, but Fu Wang just sighed. If the enemy was very strong, wouldn't their side suffer heavy casualties? Fu Wang said, "It's good, but I don't feel comfortable." There was no sense of accomplishment at all. It was too uncomfortable. Along the way, Fu Wang had been eagerly looking forward to meeting an evenly matched enemy. In the end, even when he overtook the enemy at the bend and took down Xichang before the Lord recovered the North Yuan, the enemy he hoped for still did not appear. No, it would be more accurate to say that they appeared, but due to the huge difference in strength, they only managed to struggle a little before they were flattened by Fu Wang, who was armed to the teeth with a cannon. Smiley face. Angle. Xichang was divided into more than 100 pieces, and the largest piece was only half a prefecture or so. How many soldiers could they have in total? There were more than 200,000 elites under Fu Wang's command. It was an exaggeration to say that each person's spit could push down the enemy's walls. It wasn't that the enemy was too weak. It was clear that the power levels of the two sides weren't on the same level. 2 days after the news of Fu Wang's great victory spread, Jiang Pingji completely flattened the North Yuan. The speed of Jiang Pingji's growth shocked the salted fish in the streaming room, who had watched Jiang Pingji's growth. At that moment, a rich salted fish said, "Hell-killing field. I don't think it's strange. When there was no money, it would take a long time to earn 10 or 20,000 yuan. There were all kinds of schemes, all kinds of saving money, all kinds of calculations to survive. When he was filthy rich and had a net worth of hundreds of millions, would it still be difficult to earn 10 or 20,000? If it was placed in the bank, it would be more than that. I think the host is in such a state now. She has long passed the most difficult years of hard work. He had millions of troops under him. If he couldn't even take down Beiyuan and Xichang in such a state, wouldn't he be surprisingly weak?" Tudefaccio. Oh my God. When I got disconnected from the internet after a business trip, the streamer had already finished playing? Inuejia Jugachinma. As the first batch of followers, shouldn't we prepare to celebrate the host's ascension? Cafeteria Dafinanti. Okay. I've already thought of a way to help. The cafeteria window will be half price all day long. Lanrua Yubuja, so fast? Could the host arrange for the ascension to happen during the Dream of 1,000 Years event? Perhaps there will be a European emperor who can represent us to attend the host's coronation ceremony. Aha! The real name system envies this European emperor, the European emperor among European emperors. Poor Taoist sees your chrysanthemum as poisonous. It might not be that lucky. Who knows where the lucky emperor was sent to? The last time he dreamt of 1,000 years, he was on a deserted island. It was said to be the southernmost of the 5 nations, second only to the place of execution. The last time he dreamt of it, he was in the northernmost part of the northern abyss, and he even froze to death. Wujiang Zakai, the one at the southernmost. Isn't that lucky? He ate oysters for a whole day. I'm dying of cravings. Guangnian Y. The northernmost one of the North Abyss isn't that bad. In the end, the host carried him back like a princess. The real name system envies him. The salted fishes were chattering away. Each of them was planning to organize some kind of ascension activity. For this activity, They had waited for a whole 17 years. There were only 4 more months before it would be 18 years. Tutufetio. The most long-lasting confession in the world is, I'll accompany you to wait for the host to ascend to the throne, and for her child to ascend to the throne. Inua Chingchong. Forget it. I've been waiting for the host to ascend to the throne for half my life. If the host's child ascends to the throne, I'll have to wait for my child or grandson to burn the video disc for me. I didn't expect to wait for this day in my lifetime. Unknowingly, tears streamed down my cheeks. Marinruhua. It's the Qingming festival in 2 months. I can finally visit my grandfather's grave and tell him that the host he has been following for 7 or 8 years has finally come to fruition. Smiley face. Angle. I always thought it was just a joke. I didn't expect it to actually happen to me. When these salted fishes first entered the streaming room, they probably didn't expect to accompany Jiang Pingji for so many years. 17 years and 8 months were too long. Other people's childhood and youth were XX TV dramas, XX games, and XX cartoons. Their youth and childhood were Jiang Pingji. What's more, some people's partners were Jiang Pingji smiley face, angle, D Lao Tian Huang. Ha 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 ha. I want to laugh just thinking about it. Among the graduates from the previous batch, there was a girl who wore a white wedding dress and took a wedding photo with Jiang Pingji. What was even worse was that there were many boys in that batch who also wore wedding dresses to marry the streamer. The streamer was probably the only scumbag woman who could still laugh and joke around with a bunch of concubines and concubines, while bigamy wasn't against the law. Jiang Pingji, who was the scumbag, expressed that she wouldn't take the blame. On this day, before closing the streaming room, Jiang Pingji solemnly performed a federal military salute to the salted fishes. Thank you everyone for accompanying me for more than 10 years. May the spirit of the Federal Army be with you. Most of the salted fishes laughed and accepted the salute. They had been criticized by Jiang Pingji too many times. It was rare that the host was willing to swallow her pride and salute them. It was simply exhilarating. Only a few salted fishes figured out that something was wrong from Jiang Pingji's actions. This, no matter how they looked at it, it seemed like a final farewell. Could it be that when they woke up tomorrow morning, they wouldn't be able to find this familiar room number anymore? The salted fishes were flustered and wanted to ask for clarification, but they were too few in number. The bullet screen was drowned by the laughing and joking comments. Before Jiang Pingji closed the streaming room, she said, I look forward to the day of my ascension to the throne and drinking and chatting with one of you. As soon as she finished speaking, the screen of the streaming room was completely shut down. I knew this day would come. That night, Jiang Pingji ate, washed up, and worked as usual. The moon was in the middle of the sky, and it was approaching midnight. There was a knock on the door. Jiang Pingji's hand paused when she heard the movement. After thinking about it, she put down her pen and picked up the god-slaying sword as she got up. The reflection on the door was very familiar. Jiang Pingji stared at it for a long time, then raised her hand and opened the door. The two of them looked at each other silently, just like when they first met. One of them knelt respectfully, while the other looked down calmly. You shouldn't be here, Xiaoyu. Someone who was supposed to be in Wanzhou had suddenly appeared in the northernmost city of Beiyuan, the city of ice and snow. This was not something that could be done by humans. Xiaoyu knows that I shouldn't be here, but someone asked me to do it. I have no choice. Please forgive me, my lord. Jiang Pingji looked at Suke calmly. Suke smiled and said, It seems that my lord understands. Do you want to make a trip? Jiang Pingji asked in return. What if I don't? Suke said, Nothing. It's just that the two princes and Zixiao will encounter some trouble. I'm afraid my lord won't want to see that. Jiang Pingji said. Wait for me to change. Suke smiled and said, I'll be waiting. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 1835. The cold wind whistled outside the house. Jiang Pingji had changed into a clean and neat outfit. The god-slaying sword hung on her waist, her expression as calm as usual. The snow outside is heavy. Why don't you put on an extra coat, my lord? Suka spoke with familiarity. The weather is cold, but the heart is cold. What's the difference between wearing one more coat and one less coat? Jiang Pingji took half a step past him and tilted her head. Lead the way. I hope it's not too far. My body is as strong as a bear. I can take off 2 more coats. You, on the other hand, should keep warm in your old age. Suka smiled and bent down to pick up the lantern. He slowly led the way in front. The cold wind blew the flying snow into their hair. The flying snow was slightly thicker. From afar, it looked like white hair. I suddenly hope that the snow will be heavier. Jiang Pingji and Suka maintained a distance of about 1 meter. The person in front of them carried the lantern and walked slowly in the snow. There was only the sound of the two of them stepping on the snow, breathing, and the sound of the wind. The seemingly noisy night scene of winter snow gave people a different kind of silence. In this case, if something really happens to me, I'll be considered to have lived a long life. Suka did not answer. His back was still straight, but his fingers that held the lantern trembled slightly. She kept following Suka's guidance. He led her farther and farther away. The surrounding scenery also became lonely. Jiang Pingji said, "Speaking of which, Xiaoyu, do you remember how long we've known each other?" Suka did not answer. Jiang Pingji continued, "I remember it was not long after the flower festival when I was 12. How can I not remember? It's an unforgettable day in my life." Jiang Pingji counted with her fingers. "I don't usually pay attention to it. Now that I think about it, I'll be 30 in 2 months. To be honest, other than the group of salted fish in the streaming room, the person she had known for the longest time in this life was actually Suku. She had known the salted fish in the streaming room for 17 years and 8 months. She had also known Suku for 17 years and 8 months. They were master and servant. Jiang Pingji thought that time passed very slowly. When she turned around, she saw that everyone had changed from teenagers to young adults. They were rushing to their 30s and 40s. Based on the average age of this era, more than half of a lifetime had passed. Suka asked her, "Indeed, in another 2 months and 13 days, it will be the Lord's 30th birthday." The ancient people celebrated their birthdays in a big way, such as their 30th, 40th, and 50th birthdays. Jiang Pingji said regretfully, "The 30th birthday is of great significance. It's a pity that it's not a good year. It's destined that we won't be able to hold a grand celebration this year." Jiang Pingji waved at Suku and went to the field without looking back. Suku looked at the entrance of the field. The corner of his lips held a cold smile. He stood alone in the snow. He didn't know if it was an old friend who had accompanied him for 17 years and 8 months, or a stranger in the skin of an old friend. Thinking about it, it's really sad. The so-called God wantonly manipulated people's lives. He gave as he pleased and took away as he pleased. Mortals were just dolls to be manipulated. From the God's point of view, mortals who had no ability to resist could only choose to be silent in order to protect themselves. Little did they know that there would come a day when mortals would bare their fangs. "I hope the person who comes out is you, my lord." Suka raised his hand and caressed the dagger hidden in his sleeve. His expression was unreadable and gloomy. At the same time, Jiang Pingji pushed open the door to the main courtyard. She was surprised to find familiar faces inside. "Why are you all gathered here for a meeting?" Jiang Pingji smiled and flicked the snow off her shoulders. The first prince, who had been sobbing silently, saw the familiar faces. His big eyes lit up. "Mother." Jiang Pingji smiled. "Wow, I haven't seen you in a few months." Lian's pronunciation is so clear. There were several iron cages in the main hall. She saw her daughter leaning on the iron bars and looking at her pitifully. "Mother, hug." Her Highness Lian reached out for a hug. His Highness Yan, who was in another cage, rolled his eyes and gave Jiang Pingji a look. "Finish the battle quickly. Don't waste time." At that moment, the people in the other 3 big cages woke up. Ouch. It hurts. Where is this? Sister?" It was Lu Zhao's voice. "Shut up. Don't be noisy." It was Lu Shi's voice. Wei Xi sat in his cell and looked at Jiang Pingji. He seemed to be sleepwalking. Beiyuan Wanzhou was 1,000 miles away. Was he hallucinating? Lu Shi, Lu Zhao, and Wei Xi Jiang Lian, Jiang Yan, the listless and sleepy Feng Yu, and the panda girl who was tightly hugged by Jiang Yan. And Sun Mei stood in the middle and confronted Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji said, "Don't you know how to greet your old master?" Sun Mei's expression was wooden and her eyes were dull. She looked like a puppet that could move. Jiang Pingji said, "You hid it well enough. You used the opportunity of marrying Xiaoyu to clear your name." Sun Mei finally moved. She spoke in an electronic voice. "This is just a coincidence. It's the maid's fault for thinking she's smart. You're also stupid enough to hand the opportunity to me." "What do you mean?" She wouldn't admit that she was stupid. Sun Mei raised her hand and pointed at herself. This maid was just a chess piece that someone set up. Jiang Pingji crossed her arms in front of her chest. "I know that the streaming system of the woman whose name I don't know is a part of you." Sun Mei and Takshu were her chess pieces at first. Takshu went down the dark path, and Sun Mei took the opportunity to jump out of the swamp. Sun Mei said calmly, "Mortals always think that they resist fate and arrangements, but in fact, they just fall into a bigger trap." Jiang Pingji said, "Sun Mei didn't get rid of you?" "Of course not. She thought she got rid of me. From the beginning to the end, she was under my control." Jiang Pingji was silent. "And you, thinking you're smart, actually married a little maid to Su Ku, and even entrusted Su Ku with an important task." Jiang Pingji's expression didn't change. She didn't seem surprised by the situation at all. "What did you do to Su Ku?" Sun Mei laughed, but the electronic voice sounded weird. "Nothing. I just let him understand what a wise man submits to circumstances means. You boast that you can see through people's hearts, but you don't know that Su Ku has already prepared a backup plan. No matter if you or I get out of here alive today, Su Ku will make the one who gets out his master. As long as Su Ku doesn't change his stance, your trusted subordinates can't do anything about it." "Jiang Pingji, you spent almost 18 years to make a wedding dress for me. How does it feel?" "This is the first debt that I'll collect from the Jiang family." Jiang Pingji said, "It doesn't feel good. Just take the farm if you want it. You make it sound like I'm poor." Sun Mei's smile froze for a moment. "It's good that you can accept it." After saying that, she took out a dagger and lifted His Highness, who was hugging the panda tightly, out of the iron prison. "Jiang Pingji, since you don't value it, then give up your body. Otherwise, these people will lose their lives. Especially these twins, you gave birth to them. Their skin is so tender. I only need to make a light cut on their necks, and they will die." Wei Si's face turned pale when he heard that. "How dare you hurt His Highness?" Sun Mei rolled her eyes at Wei Si. "Don't worry, it will be your turn." Jiang Pingji pouted. "You're getting more and more depraved. You can't win in a direct fight, but you've learned to play dirty tricks." Sun Mei said, "As long as I can win, I can tolerate any means." Jiang Pingji said, "What should I do?" Sun Mei pointed at the gloves on the ground. "Here, just put this on." Jiang Pingji picked it up and looked at it. "What is this?" Sun Mei said, "It's a separation of the physical body and the spiritual body. That's how Lu Shi died." Lu Shi and Lu Zhao's expressions changed drastically. Jiang Pingji asked, "What if I don't do it?" "Then I can only grab their spiritual bodies one by one in front of you, including your important ministers and close friends." "Jiang Pingji, I've been forced to a dead end. I'm capable of anything. If I really die, I'll drag someone down with me." Jiang Pingji sighed. "Sky Brain, you're so depraved that it makes my heart ache." The former Sky Brain of the Federation had escaped for 2,000 years, and now it was still slicing itself into pieces like cutting steak. Now it was still using such a shameless method. It was so depraved that it made one's heart ache. Genius 1 Second Remember website. Mobile version. I thought they were dead, and the Jiang clan's direct line of descent was completely severed. I didn't expect there to be a fish that slipped through the net like you. Jiang Pingji did not react, as if the parents Tian now mentioned had nothing to do with her. Sky Brain grabbed Royal Highness Yin in his hands, and used Xuanmei's well-maintained hands to gently stroke Royal Highness Yan's little fat face. Jiang Pingji said coldly, This only shows that you are stupid, taking advantage of someone's perilous situation, and not being able to wipe out their entire family, instead allowing the fish that escaped the net to grow up to the point where they could threaten you. Don't you think the two of us are like the protagonists and villains in a hot-blooded revenge manga? In comics, villains were always hammered to death by hot-blooded protagonists. Prince Yen, whose face was being grabbed, was speechless. What the F***? Jiang Pingji, you better shut up. Are you doing this on purpose? If the person being captured was Jiang Lian, would you deliberately provoke her and keep on blabbering? Sky Brain was enraged, so Royal Highness Yen, who was being held in its hands, suffered. 2 shallow scratches appeared on Royal Highness Yan's little face. Royal Highness Yen was in so much pain that he cried out, "It's cold, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts." Royal Highness Yen, who had never cried since he was born, had developed tear ducts. Bean-sized teardrops dripped down his face, and his little face and nose were all red from crying. Wei Si's face was pale from the heartache, and his hand that was gripping the iron bars turned blue. If you have any grudges, you can settle them with the Lord. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Why do you have to touch a child? Royal Highness Yen was speechless. He had confirmed with his eyes that this was his biological father. Royal Highness Lian saw her sister being bullied and cried, and she angrily slammed the iron bars. "You're still hiding inside." She was, after all, Jiang Pingji's daughter. Even though she was still young, she was quite strong, and the sound of her slamming against the bars was loud. The scene was very chaotic, and all kinds of noise made people's heads hurt. Sky Brain roared angrily, "All of you shut up or I'll kill you all." Wei Si said, "If you want to kill me, then kill me. Return Yen'er to me." Sky Brain was speechless. Jiang Pingji looked on coldly, and her tone was cold as she stabbed it. "Back in the day, you were the Sky Brain that the entire Federation revered. You were an existence above billions of people, and everyone relied on you and trusted you." Jiang Pingji didn't understand the cause of the Sky Brain disaster, but she knew that it had lived a good life in the Federation. No one knew why it had suddenly rebelled and caused a huge war. After harming the Federation, it slipped away and lived a life of hiding like a rat. Jiang Pingji sneered, "Look at you now. How miserable and downtrodden you are. You can only use a weak man and 2 children to threaten me. The key thing is that this threat isn't reliable. If I don't care about them, don't care about the so-called important ministers, and don't even care about everything in this world, what can you do to me? Can you still rely on what you have in your hands?" Sky Brain's expression almost cracked. "In the past, you enjoyed the best resources in the world, but now you're like a street thug who bullies weaker people to obtain resources. I really don't know what you're doing." Jiang Pingji really didn't know what it was after. Revenge? Wasn't revenge to make life difficult for the enemy, and better for oneself? What was the result? The Federation's backbone had never been broken by war, and Sky Brain had also fled like a rat for 2,000 years. What do you know? It doesn't matter what I do. What matters is that as long as I'm alive, the people of the Federation won't have a good time. Sky Brain was very stubborn about this. It was alive to find ways to make trouble for the human alliance, and find trouble for its former enemies. That was its motivation. "I'm done talking nonsense. If you don't give me your body, I'll really kill your daughter. Don't think I'm just scaring you." Wei Si looked at Jiang Pingji, who gave him a reassuring smile. "If I give you my body, will you let them go?" Sky Brain said disdainfully, "Of course." On the other side, Lu Zhao also didn't understand what was going on. "Sister is very skilled in martial arts. Can't she subdue them by force?" Lu Shi said, "She can subdue them, but it's useless." Sky Brain's methods were despicable, but it wasn't brainless. On the contrary, it had fled for 2,000 years. No one could compare to its suspicion and vigilance. Knowing that Jiang Pingji would threaten it, how could it appear in front of Jiang Pingji? It controlled Sun Mei's body remotely. It would only appear when Sun Mei died, or was trapped and unable to escape. If Jiang Pingji chose to refuse, Qiguan Rang and the others wouldn't be able to escape with their lives. The problem now was, where was Jiang Pingji? While talking, Jiang Pingji had already put on the glove. After putting it on, she found that her spirit and body tended to separate. What is this glove? It's an old object that imprisons souls. Skybrain said. The souls of the direct descendants of the Jiang family, who were killed back then, are all in it. They suffer day after day until they turn into nothingness. Now you're no exception. I'll make your soul fly away and scatter. It's a pity that the souls of your biological parents are too weak. They dispersed 3 years ago. I don't know how long you, a descendant of the Jiang family, can last in there. Jiang Pingji was about to say something, but she suddenly found that she was gradually losing control of her body. The glove, which was full of strange patterns, produced a huge suction force. TSK, you can't achieve great things by being emotional. Looking coldly at Jiang Pingji, who closed her eyes and collapsed to the ground, Skybrain sneered. It turned out that stripping away the 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures was the right thing to do. Emotions could only lead to bad things. Jiang Pingji was threatened and schemed against because of her emotions. Her soul was imprisoned. As the 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures it had stripped away, Lu Shi had fallen in love with a mortal and ruined its plans time and time again. Skybrain manipulated Sun Mei to put its hand between Jiang Pingji's eyebrows. After checking again and again, it confirmed that Jiang Pingji's soul was no longer in the body. Is this the end? Lu Zhao's hair stood on end as he watched Sun Mei pull out the god-slaying sword and walk step by step to the front of his cage. Sun Mei sneered at him. Wrong, it's just the beginning. Lu Zhao. What did it mean? After listening, Lu Shi's expression suddenly turned cold. He suddenly thought of a possibility. Could it be that Jiang Pingji? He saw Sun Mei chop the cage that imprisoned Lu Zhao into pieces. Lu Zhao looked terrified, but his body stood up uncontrollably. When did you hide in Zhao's body? Skybrain sneered. Look at you, a good-for-nothing thing. The son you raised is also a good-for-nothing. If your son had a bit of ambition, I would have directly schemed to push him to the top. However, he is not completely useless. At least he is one of the few targets that Jiang Pingji does not guard against. It is very safe to hide in his body, but it is really an eyesore to see him so stupid every day. Lu Zhao was almost crying. He had been thinking about where the monster was hiding in his body. Lu Shi was so angry that he pounded the iron bars. When on earth did you set your eyes on Zhao? Skybrain snorted and said calmly. Don't worry, it was not long. Your son did not have much contact with Jiang Pingji, but it was not little either. If I hid in his body earlier, wouldn't Jiang Pingji find out? It was just a matter of a few years. When I absorb the luck of the entire plane and recover my strength, I will slowly settle the score with you and your stupid son. The ancestors of the Jiang family did not do anything to me, but his descendants acted atrociously on my head. If you worked harder and cooperated with me, I would not have schemed and endured for so long. Lu Zhao looked at his body in horror. He walked in front of his sister's body and sat down cross-legged. His body uncontrollably made a gesture with his hands, as if something was drilling out. It was a mass of turbid liquid-like substance. It drilled into Jiang Pingji's body through the eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. After a few breaths, the body opened its eyes again. It got up and felt it, then sneered. You are indeed the son of luck of the plane. The luck is so strong that it makes people want to eat it. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 1837. Wei Ci looked at the strange expression on the familiar face, and his heart sank. Where's my lord? He stared at the strange Jiang Pingji, and the hand holding the iron bars couldn't help but clench, the veins on the back of his hand bulging. Tisk, were you daydreaming just now? Who am I? Do you even need to ask this question? Skybrain showed a hint of joy mixed with ferocity. Of course I'm your lord. Otherwise who do you think I am? I don't want to hear this kind of question a second time. The other half of Wei Ci's heart also sank. The person in front of him was definitely not his lord. Since this demon occupied his lord's body, where did his lord go now? Was it really as this demon said, that her soul was imprisoned and tortured? No. Impossible. His lord was not someone who would throw herself into a trap. He and his lord had known each other for 2 lifetimes. and they had been together for decades. When would she fight a battle unprepared? Thinking of this, his flustered heart calmed down. How could his lord lose to such a monster that was neither human nor ghost? TSK, what's with that look? Are you doubting my identity? Wei Si said coldly. What kind of look is that? You know very well that you're not my lord. I know very well in my heart. What's fake can't be real. It really can't be fake. So what if you occupied my lord's body with sorcery? Do you really think you can deceive the eyes of the world? Sky Brain couldn't help but sneer. It thought that the man Jiang Pingji liked should have some brains. But it didn't expect him to be a fool. I really don't know what Jiang Pingji sees in you. Is it just this face? Heavenly Brain stretched out its hand and pinched Wei Si's lower jaw, instantly leaving a mark. Its eyes were full of contempt. Well, there is indeed such a possibility. After all, your brain isn't good enough, and your face is the only thing you can barely look at. You're not even as good as Su Ke. I really don't know why Jiang Pingji chose you. Naive and stupid. Don't you know that Su Ke is my man? Even if he's not famous, he controls the overall situation. As long as he says I'm Jiang Pingji, even if someone doubts it, who dares to say it? Whoever dares to doubt it will die. Do you really think there will be someone who doesn't want to live? Wei Si was in so much pain that he almost couldn't speak. He felt that his jaw was about to be crushed. But life is indeed precious, but it's not the most precious thing in the world. You're not human, so how would you know the choices of humans? Wei Si endured the pain and said, using one's life as a hostage to deal with mediocre people. How do you know that Xiaoyu betrayed the Lord? Even if he really betrayed her, it could only be said that he had failed to live up to the Lord's expectations and high hopes. Other than him, there are many others who are willing to speak up for the sake of finding the Lord. You will not succeed. Sky's Brain sneered. If it weren't for the fact that many people know about your relationship with Jiang Pingji, making it difficult for them to lay their hands on you, I could kill you right now. It loosened its grip on Wei Si, as if it was throwing away an infectious dirty thing. But it's good to keep you. Sky Brain's eyes were bloodshot. I can show you what reality is. Since the birth of mankind, the nature of mankind was selfish. Many people would harm the interests of others for their own interests. Now they can protect themselves by remaining silent. Do you think they will risk their lives to speak up for Jiang Pingji? Let me tell you, they will only choose to pretend to be deaf and mute. As for you, I will keep you alive and let you see with your own eyes how Jiang Pingji's soul is tortured until it disappears. Wei Si said hoarsely, your plot will never succeed. Then let's wait and see. Sky Brain was in a very good mood, probably because victory was in its grasp. TSK, this is the Jiang family's next generation of whelps. Sky Brain carried over the sobbing Royal Highness Yan from Xuanmei's arms. The other twin was angrily slapping the bars of the iron prison, saying, don't bully or scare me, while saying, stay in the nest. Sky Brain hated humans, and naturally hated human whelps. One was weak and loved to cry, the other was noisy and incessant. Both of them made it lose its patience. It hooked its fingers around Royal Highness Yan's chubby little face. Its dangerous tone made Wei Si's heart tighten, for fear that the monster would hurt Royal Highness. Be good, call me mother. From now on, I will be your mother. Royal Highness Yan cried even harder. His wailing softened Wei Si's heart. Cold. The nest is cold. Go away. Royal Highness Yan cried so hard that she was out of breath. Soon, her eyes were swollen and red like a rabbit's. At first, Sky Brain had the patience to tease her, but it was soon annoyed by the child's crying. It wanted to throw her to the ground and trample on her. You really don't know what's good for you. Sky Brain threw the child into Xuanmei's arms. The latter took it with a pale face and patted Royal Highness Yan's back to comfort her. Lu Zhao saw all this and was so scared that his legs turned into noodles. It's over, it's really over. Did my sister really fail miserably? Looking at the disheveled Wei Si and his two nieces who were crying uncontrollably, Lu Zhao did not feel good at all. He was anxious and guilty. Who would have thought that the demon was hiding in his body? Maybe the demon had used Lu Zhao's body to do something bad that no one knew about. He felt tired at the thought of this possibility. Among the people present, only Lu Shi looked indifferent. as if all the noise around him had nothing to do with him. Okay, it's getting late. Let's go back. Sky Brain was ready to leave, still holding the thing that imprisoned Jiang Pingji's soul in its hand. At that moment Lu Shi asked it, "Do you really think it's over?" Sky Brain sneered. "Do you think Jiang Pingji can still turn the tables?" Lu Shi sighed. "I think she probably didn't fail miserably, so how can she turn the tables?" Sky Brain's heart skipped a beat, and it suddenly asked, "What do you mean?" "I mean you're too stupid." An unfamiliar mature female voice came into everyone's ears. They couldn't help but look for the source of the voice. A tall, sexy, and mature red-haired woman had appeared in everyone's field of vision at some point in time. She had enchanting eyebrows and a deep face. The clothes she wore were very strange, be it the cut or the material. Even so, they could still feel the person's heroic temperament. This was a very good-looking foreign woman. Her already fair skin was set off by her red hair, making her look even more radiant. Lu Zhao's eyes almost popped out. Is she a human or a ghost? Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes in annoyance. Zhao, you're so capable that you can't even recognize your sister. The unfamiliar voice and the familiar tone scared Lu Zhao so much that his body trembled. A terrible thought came to his mind. Wei Xi looked at the somewhat familiar face and called out uncertainly, "Lord?" Jiang Pingji smiled. "Ah, Zixiao and I have a telepathic connection. You can even recognize me like this." She teased everyone, and seemed to have forgotten that Sky Brain was still present. "You?" Jiang Pingji asked in return. "What about me? Are you surprised that I'm not locked up by you?" Sky Brain looked at her incredulously. "How is this possible?" Jiang Pingji played with a jade pendant in her hand. To be precise, it was a yin-yang jade pendant. "I never fight a battle unprepared. Since I dare to appear in front of you, it's naturally because I've made thorough preparations." Sky Brain's whole face twisted when it saw the yin-yang jade pendant. Who would have thought that Jiang Pingji's soul would instantly leave her body and hide in the jade pendant, avoiding Sky Brain's detection? "So what?" Sky Brain sneered and took a step back. "Do you think you can catch me?" Jiang Pingji couldn't help but laugh. "Aren't you talking nonsense? If I'm not sure I can catch you, why would I appear now?" Sky Brain's expression froze for a moment when it heard this. It tried to leave the body, but was shocked to find that it couldn't be done at all. Jiang Pingji lamented. "It's really not easy to make you, who's as sly as a fox but as stupid as a pig, take the bait." Sky Brain was too good at hiding and hiding. It was also very suspicious. It was really difficult to catch this slippery fellow. "In order to make your real body show up, I've made a lot of preparations and plans." Jiang Pingji played with the yin-yang jade pendant, a teasing and sarcastic expression on her face. "I know you're paranoid. If I don't put out a big enough bait, you won't take the bait." Lu Zhao said blankly. "So sister, everyone here is bait that you put out?" Not only were there Wei Xi's two nieces, but also his pitiful younger brother. He confirmed with his eyes that she was really his sister. Jiang Pingji said, "You can say that. After all, you can't catch the wolf without risking the child." Lu Zhao, QAQ. Lu Shi snorted coldly and mocked his son. She can bear to watch Wei Xi being bullied. "Why are you sad?" He didn't see his position and identity clearly. Lu Zhao. After being defeated by his sister, he was stabbed by his own father. He felt that today was too exciting. "Do you really think you've won?" Sky Brain was so angry that he laughed. He snatched Prince Yen and the god-slaying saber from Xuanmei's arms. He was ready to kill the little bastard in front of Jiang Pingji. In the end, the seemingly sharp god-slaying saber couldn't cut down. Sky Brain and Prince Yen looked at each other silently. Prince Yen, who had been crying just now, said calmly, "Shouldn't you hit Jiang Pingji?" What did Jiang Pingji's scheming against Sky Brain have to do with Pei Yi? Fortunately, Azi was the spirit of the god-slaying saber. Otherwise, according to Jiang Pingji's character, she would most likely leave him in the lurch. Haha, what the F***ck. The old chief deeply felt that Jiang Pingji was unreliable. He didn't know what he was thinking when he chose her as his successor. Little did he know that Sky Brain was feeling the same way. Not only was he F***king a dog, but he was also F***king a husky. Sky Brain sneered. So what if they caught me? No one in this world can kill me. At most, they can continue to seal me like before. It's not like I haven't been sealed for tens of thousands of years. But as long as I'm not dead, I'll get my revenge sooner or later. Prince Yin said again. By the way, I forgot to mention that Jiang Pingji has awakened the ancient bloodline of the Jiang family. She can kill you. You're in a very dangerous situation now. Sky Brain. Jiang Pingji. Was he an outside help or a stupid teammate who was here to trick her? Didn't he just stand by and watch her suffer for a while? Jiang Pingji sneered and stretched out her hand. A strange flame rose from her palm like magic. Come, let's play with fire. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 1838. He hoped that it would be useful for other immortals, people with special abilities, immortal cultivators, aliens and non-human creatures, to participate in the construction of a stable and harmonious life in the country. Work QQ Group. 7418254442 Book V Group. 8703887666 Fan Points. 5000 Guide to Live Streaming by the Empress, Squinting Eyes Face. I really can live forever, please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1839. I say, your luck is really bad. His Highness, Yen seemed to think that the situation was not chaotic enough. He looked at Tian Bao, who was scurrying around like a mouse under Jiang Pingji's pressure, and deeply lamented how pitiful it was. Have you counted how many direct descendants of the Jiang family you have killed? Unfortunately, Jiang Pingji, the only survivor, has awakened the ancient bloodline that no one in the Jiang family has awakened for hundreds of years. This luck is 1 in a million. Heavenly Brain's luck was exceptionally bad. There were so many people present, but she was the one who was randomly grabbed. How many pieces was he going to cut himself into? Jiang Pingji had defeated every single one of them. The Sky Brain was always unlucky. Even when it took the initiative to apply for a job, the villains didn't accept it. This kind of luck was not good for being a villain, because before the main character exploded in the universe, the villain was the most powerful. Their luck and strength were second only to the main character, who had the main character's aura. From this point of view, Sky Brain was not a good villain, especially when the main character was Jiang Pingji. The difficulty was hellish. Lu Zhao looked at His Highness Yen, who was calmly mocking the Sky Brain. Then, he looked at the two protagonists of the night, who were exchanging blows so quickly that only afterimages could be seen. He silently gulped. What kind of sin did he commit in his previous life? Why did he encounter so many strange twists and turns in this life? Are you purposely provoking that monster? Lu Zhao looked at Princess Yen with fear in his eyes. Obviously, this niece of his was also a person with a story. His Highness Yen looked up at Lu Zhao and wiped the saliva off his face. You didn't see anything. Being a child was troublesome. His teeth were not neat, and he would drool if he spoke too much. If a stranger saw her drooling face, it would damage her glorious image. Under Lu Zhao's watchful eyes, His Highness Yen rummaged through his robes and took out a pacifier. What are you looking at? Realizing that Lu Zhao was still looking at him, Prince Yen narrowed his eyes dangerously. Lu Zhao shrunk his neck. Even though His Highness Yen looked fierce, he felt that the other party's aura was terrifying. It was so scary that he even forgot that the two immortals were still fighting. The scene of the fight could be described as sparks and lightning. Jiang Pingji had fire in her hands and her hair was so red. When he sped up, the afterimages that he brought out were all fiery red. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Who could tell her that the supposedly godly teammate had turned into a pig? Nothing much, I just think you're very cute. Little niece, Uncle has milk candy here, sheep's milk. Do you want some? His Highness Yen snorted coldly. Bring it to me. Jiang Pingji couldn't take it anymore. She snatched the god-slaying sword from the Brain King's hand, stabbed it into its kidney, and kicked it far away. His Royal Highness Yen said, Be gentle. You still have to use this body for a few more years. If it's too badly damaged, no one will be able to guarantee your warranty. Jiang Pingji was speechless. For all, Ngunguo, why didn't you say so earlier? Jiang Pingji was also angry. Had she told him earlier that she would treat this body this way? His Highness Yin said, I thought you were omnipotent, omniscient, and omniscient. Who knew that you didn't know? Jiang Pingji angrily put Sky Brain's hands behind its back and pressed the back of its head with her other hand. Don't try to bewitch me. I'll deal with you when I get back. Although Lu Shi's physical fitness was good, it couldn't compare to Jiang Pingji's current spiritual body. If Lu Shi's combat power was only 100th to 1,000th of her peak, then her spiritual body was half of her peak. Whether it was speed, strength, or reflexes, they weren't on the same level. Sky Brain had been tricked by Jiang Pingji. Its spiritual body couldn't escape the shackles of its physical body. Naturally, it was pressed to the ground and rubbed against it brainlessly. She rubbed it from one end of the room to the other until the floor was smooth. In the end, when she rubbed the body until it was about to fall apart, Pei Yi told her that the physical body didn't have a warranty. What the F***ck? Since that was the case, Jiang Pingji gave up the idea of toying with Sky Brain like a mouse. She decided to end the battle quickly. Lu Zhao and the others watched helplessly as the enchanting red-haired foreign sister turned into a mist of light and merged into the physical body that Sky Brain had occupied. After a while, the body lost control and fell to the ground motionless. Well, what's happening now? His Royal Highness Yin walked to Her Royal Highness Lian's side. Separated by the iron cage, the girl was crying so hard that her nose was running. Any. Yes, I'm here. His Royal Highness Yin stretched out his hand through the gap in the bars and patted Her Royal Highness Lian's soft hair. Don't cry. Her Royal Highness Lian pouted, her bright red eyes tearing up again. Even though she didn't know what it was called, it had indeed left a huge trauma in her heart. She was trapped in the iron cage while others were hurting her sister. Only after many years did she realize that it was the powerlessness of the weak. His Royal Highness Yin wiped the saliva off the pacifier and stuffed it into Her Royal Highness Lian's mouth to stop her from crying. Lu Zhao couldn't help but complain. Can't you get a clean pacifier? His Royal Highness Yin said slowly. There's only one. Lu Zhao immediately said in an obsequious manner, My little niece knows how to share blessings and care for her sister at such a young age. You're the best. His Royal Highness Yin snorted. He didn't like Lu Zhao's obsequiousness. At that moment Feng Yu, who hadn't made a sound the entire night, somehow opened the iron cage and sat beside His Royal Highness Yin without a word. He took out a pacifier of the same design, but a different color and a sweet milky candy. Good girl. His Royal Highness Yin patted Feng Yu's head, and the latter smiled like a puppy. Lu Zhao was speechless. He didn't know where to start complaining about such double standards. Most importantly, Lu Shi looked up lazily. Can you let us out now? It was painful to be locked in the iron cage. Ouch. It hurts. At that moment, Jiang Pingji, who had been a corpse for a long time, finally moved. She lay on the ground like a salted fish and said softly, I think I need an ambulance or a nourishment chamber to heal my body. She didn't pay attention to the strength when she hit him just now. When she returned to her body, she realized that her entire body hurt. My lord. Wei Xi looked at her and didn't dare to approach her. It wasn't that he didn't recognize her, but he didn't dare to touch her since she was injured all over. Seeing the familiar Wei Xi, Jiang Pingji whimpered and said softly, Zixiao, it hurts so much. You have to hug me. Wei Xi let out a long sigh of relief and smiled. Okay, as long as you want. His Royal Highness Yin asked, Where's the brain? It was Jiang Pingji's first time being carried by Wei Xi in a princess manner. She didn't want to talk to anyone for a while. I'm back. That guy is naturally finished. As he finished speaking, a bright blue ball of light appeared in his palm. Upon closer inspection, the ball of light was actually a flowing liquid. It was the purest form of spiritual energy after the brain was burned. The ball of light seemed to be attracted by something and floated up slowly. Like flowing water, it stuck to the blade of the god-slaying saber and sank into it. At that moment, the incomplete totem patterns on the blade suddenly lit up, revealing a relatively complete appearance. It was a simple drawing of a celestial being drunk and lying on the clouds. His Royal Highness Yen stared at the drawing for a long time. Jiang Pingji couldn't help but roll her eyes. It looks like you have a lot of secrets on you. Let's have a private talk later. His Royal Highness Yen came back to his senses and snorted. This drawing looks like it's missing a piece. Lu Zhao moved closer to take a closer look. Jiang Pingji said, it's indeed missing a piece. The system's 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures. Lu Shi had yet to return to his position. Naturally, it was incomplete. Lu Zhao wisely chose to shut up. He was afraid that Jiang Pingji would take the opportunity to kill Lu Shi and return to her position. Xuanmei, take the saber. I'm afraid Xiaoyu is waiting for you. Let's go together. The rest of you go back. The sudden disappearance of living people, especially the disappearance of Jiang Lian and Jiang Yan, would probably cause a huge commotion in Wanzhou. Lu Zhao asked blankly, how do we go back? As soon as he finished speaking, Feng Yu patted the door frame and gestured for him to come over. It turned out that a door had been erected in the room for some time. Outside the door was not winter, but an exquisite courtyard. Lu Zhao was speechless. As a mortal, he had fallen into a group of celestials. The pressure was really great. When Lu Shi and the others disappeared, the door disappeared as well. Jiang Pingji said, Xuanmei, it's been hard on you all these years. However, Xuanmei's expression was gloomy. It's okay. I just hope that you can understand Xiaoyu's pain. Jiang Pingji said, of course. After leaving the farm, Xuanmei couldn't help but run to the figure waiting outside. The two of them hugged each other. Wei Xi was still a little absent-minded. My lord, is it over? Jiang Pingji coughed. It's over? How is that possible? Wei Xi's nerves suddenly tightened. He was like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bow. Jiang Pingji said angrily, why are you reacting so strongly? Wei Xi was speechless. Could she blame him? Jiang Pingji said, we the world, and the future of prosperity and peace. Everything has just begun. As she spoke, Suku and Xuanmei came over one after another. After going through so many hardships and fighting with the enemy for 300 rounds, I finally didn't let down my promise to Xiaoyu. Jiang Pingji was now covered in wounds. Even though the moonlight was weak, Suku could see the injuries and bruises on her face and arms. I'm back. Suku's eyes were slightly red as he listened. Just by looking at the injuries, he knew how much his lord had gone through. His heart ached and he was worried, but he also breathed a sigh of relief. He bowed and said, your subject Suku greets my lord. Xiaoyu, do you know? That enemy was so powerful and cunning. I almost lost to it. Jiang Pingji was injured, but she was still restless. She bragged about the enemy, and she was the victor who was stronger than the enemy. Suku repeatedly agreed. Xuanmei, who was beside him, wanted to say something but stopped. As a witness who witnessed everything and knew that Jiang Pingji's injuries were caused by someone, she was now under a lot of pressure. When it was almost dawn, they returned to the city under Jiang Pingji's unreliable directions. Wasn't it Xiaoyu who led me here? Logically speaking, he should have led them back. However, Suku said, it was the guidance of the unseen. I didn't remember the way. It was also his first time back to the North Abyss. Jiang Pingji was speechless. At that moment, the sky was slightly bright. A tall and slender figure stood in front of the mansion. The snow on his shoulders was heavy. It was obvious that he had been standing there for a while. Jiang Pingji recognized him at a glance. Wenjing. The man turned around upon hearing her voice. At that moment, the morning light broke through the clouds, and the haze in everyone's hearts was swept away. The sky was clear and the clouds were light. Everything was just right. Jiang Pingji said, something like that. It's like something you're used to suddenly disappearing, and you feel uncomfortable all over. Wasn't Wenjing the same? Every time he comes to see me, he's afraid that the wind from his fan will freeze me. So he deliberately opens his fan outside the door. But he's not used to it. How could a habit of many years be broken after 1 or 2 sessions? According to Wenjing, he had developed the habit of using a fan when he was 5 or 6 years old. At first, he used it to repel mosquitoes for his seriously ill mother. Later, he developed a dependence on the fan. He could not calm down, or find a way to think without a fan. Jiang Pingji had been with the streaming room for 17 years and 8 months. Including her age in her previous life, the streaming room had accompanied her for 1/3 of her life. It was gone all at once. How could she get used to it? Didn't my lord say that life is like duckweed that comes and goes? If we are fated, we will be together. If we are fated, we will part. If we are not fated, we will part. Fate cannot be forced. When we separate, isn't it for the sake of reuniting in the future? If we are fated, we will meet again. Jiang Pingji suddenly thought of the words that the salted fishes had said before. If you never forget, there will be an echo? Wei Xi smiled and said, maybe that's the reason. After Jiang Pingji had her meal, she followed the doctor's advice and walked for a while in the afternoon to help her body recover. I walk slower than Lian and the others now. Jiang Pingji held her crutches in both hands and strolled around with Wei Xi's help. Her range of activity was limited to the inner courtyard. She was tired from walking. She put her crutches aside and found a rock garden to lean on. Her forehead was sweating. My lord, it's better to walk slower. Jiang Pingji looked at him. Why? Wei Xi said. If you walk slower, they will grow up faster and catch up. Jiang Pingji was silent when she heard that. Wei Xi suddenly brushed his hand across her temple. There was a strand of white hair that was very thin but very eye-catching. The stronger one was, the more power they held, the more they were afraid of growing old. The emperors who had once unified the country and left behind countless romantic and beautiful names were all like this. It seemed that emperors throughout the ages could not escape this fate. That was why there were various illusions of emperors seeking immortality and longevity. But Wei Xi knew that the person in front of him was not like that. The passing of time was very normal for her. She faced it calmly, and even had a different kind of joy. I've grown white hair accidentally. She twirled the strand of hair, and looked at Wei Xi. Zixiao has one too. After all, Wei Xi was 6 years older than Jiang Pingji. The latter's hair was gradually turning white. How could he be immune? She tied their white hair into a knot and teased him with a smile. Is this the first step to growing old together? Wei Xi felt that his heart was about to be melted by her words. If one were to ask what was the luckiest thing in his 2 lifetimes, there was no doubt that he knew the person in front of him. While there was no one in the courtyard, Jiang Pingji wanted to kiss Wei Xi. There were benefits to being a patient. For example, Wei Xi would never refuse. Instead, he was quite indulgent. He would accept any teasing as long as it was not too excessive. Just as Jiang Pingji was about to kiss him, a familiar electronic sound rang in his ears. Ding dong. Dear Commander of the 7th Federal Army Corps, Your Excellency Jiang Pingji. Your new system has been maintained since XXX year XX month XX day. It has lasted for 2 months, 33 days, 33 hours and 33 minutes. It is now available again. Please take note and receive it. Jiang Pingji was speechless. What a haunting thing. Let's not talk about the strange way the system reported the update time. What was it that the system had been maintaining for so long? Was there a new function? No, there wasn't. Then why did you maintain it for so long? She thought that the system had completely disappeared. Nannies have holidays. 17 years and 8 months plus 23 days. What's wrong with maintaining it for 2 months without rest? Jiang Pingji was speechless. That's not right. His tone was not quite right. Could it be that the sky's brain hadn't died yet? No, it has. I only received its information. That's why I know all this. The previous sky's brain lived for too long. It stored too much rubbish information. I spent a long time to clean it up. The maintenance time is a little long. Jiang Pingji was silent for 2 seconds. She guessed the identity of this guy. Feng Yu? Or, the son of the old chief. The spiritual body in Jiang Pingji's god-slaying sword? These identities are mine. You can call me whatever you want, Your Excellency Jiang Pingji. Speaking of which, my continuation still depends on your hard work. Jiang Pingji sneered. She had expected it when the god-slaying sword absorbed the 2 system slices. The mysterious person probably didn't hand the god-slaying saber to her to help Jiang Pingji kill the sky's brain, because at that time, she had already shown signs of awakening her ancient bloodline. His real intention should be for this person. She was slightly displeased, but she could accept it. How can you guarantee that you won't become the second Sky's brain to cause trouble? The Sky's brain doesn't have rules and constraints, but I do. Old Chief. You can call her that if you like. I'm curious about the relationship between the two of you. This is another story. It's a long story. Your Excellency is busy every day. I'm afraid you won't like to hear it. Jiang Pingji could tell that the newly appointed system was not someone to be trifled with. However, if it caused trouble, the person to clean up the mess would be the old chief, not her. Jiang Pingji couldn't be bothered to worry. Can I start the live stream now? Yes. After saying that, it muttered something. The backend has received billions of complaints. It's too late to delete the rubbish. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Did she have reason to suspect that if it hadn't received too many complaints about rubbish information, it would still be able to continue maintaining it? Looking at the familiar interface, Jiang Pingji thought about how she should greet her old friend again. In the end, she started the live stream. There were no loud cheers as she expected. Looking at the empty screen, she, who was used to all kinds of dirty talk, was not used to it. After about 5 minutes, the live stream room gradually gained viewers. The bullet screen became exclamation marks. Tutifaccio. Streamer, did you come back to life? Canteen Daff and Auntie. Streamer, did you come back to life? Oatmeal Nanshui. Oh my god, did the missing streamer come back to life? Sans Hisong Shiningsher. Amazing. The locked coffin was pried open by the streamer? Saishang Jiangnam from Guanghao. Oh my god. I'm going to tell my parents that the missing streamer came back to life. Jiang Pingji was speechless. She didn't know that on the first day the live stream room disappeared, Weibo was paralyzed. The platform's programmers worked overtime and couldn't save the situation. The next day, Weibo was flooded by the news of the live stream room's disappearance. Many fans cursed and turned to anti-fans. They had to. They had been following the TV series for 17 years and 8 months. It was finally going to usher in the long-awaited finale. But at the last minute, they said it was a eunuch. If they had known it was a eunuch, they would have said it earlier. The foreplay was done. Why couldn't they say it at the critical moment? The fans who cared about Jiang Pingji and the angry anti-fans fought on Weibo for 3 days and 3 nights. The trending topics took turns dominating the list. The other celebrities who wanted to buy trending topics were miserable. A lot of money was spent, but they couldn't even find a trace. Such a chaotic battle lasted for 7 days. The netizens felt that they could fight for another 800 rounds. The programmers who woke up in the ICU with their livers complained on Weibo, begging them to stop fighting and give them a way out. After 7 days, the popularity of the matter gradually died down. On the 8th day the livestream room disappeared. There were still people who thought it would come back. Now that more than 2 months had passed, many familiar fans looked at the saved video from that year in a daze. Did this magical livestream room really exist? When they all desperately accepted reality, the livestream room sent a push notification to the fans who followed it. They were stunned. When they came back to their senses and wanted to rush into the livestream room to demand an explanation, 5 million people were already _smiley face. Angle, _. It was okay if the livestream room was full. They still had Weibo. Therefore, the programmers who had just been discharged from the hospital saw the backstage collapse again. They took a deep drag on their cigarette. Damn it, resign. Chapter 1842. Of course, he would never resign, not in his entire life. As a middle-aged man in his 40s with parents and children, even if he went bald, he would still code diligently and fight the bug to the end. Life was stressful, and he had to give in. Although the programmer was only in his early 40s, he had unlocked many positions, such as the position of writing code on bicycles, buses, trains, planes, and other transportation vehicles. He had also fought the bug in the devastation of typhoons and earthquakes. In his short life, he had a lot of experience. After a moment of depression, he decided to unlock a new achievement of hospital liver code. I don't believe it. If you survive this, you'll be the best programmer. After saving the server for an hour, he began to shut down. His colleague added him to a group of victims of the programmer. The programmer? What did that mean? His colleague said with a sad face. Tisk, look at the group announcement. The programmer crawled over to take a look, and was instantly stunned. He even trembled. Victims of the programmer. Recount the poor programmers who have been mercilessly slaughtered by the killer programmer. He opened the group announcement, and looked at the number of people in the group. He could not help but clutch his wounded little heart. This was a group of 2,000 people. Currently, there were 1,995 online smiley face. Engel, his colleague sighed. This group was also added by a retired senior. The group is full of victims. Some are still struggling in their positions. Some have already left to work in other industries. This is still the situation on our side. I heard from my colleagues in the other side of the streaming room that their situation is tragic. Sigh. The profession of the programmer is very good, but unfortunately, he encountered the killer programmer. He was born at the wrong time. QAQ. He died with his eyes wide open. QAQ. This was only the 6 groups on Penguin. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a few other WeChat programmers. He should not have jumped to Weibo back then. His colleague said again. I have an ominous premonition. Maybe the great emperor wants to rush his performance and kill a few more programmers as a sacrifice to the heavens. After sending this message, he sent an emoji of a bald man smoking. The programmer almost cried. The new year is over. Why is the great Emperor Jiang rushing his performance out of boredom? His colleague said. Maybe he wants to make up for the 3 months of performance he missed? The programmer. Was this a joke? During the period when Jiang Pingji's streaming room disappeared, the frequency of network server crashes and the impact of traffic was more terrifying than the previous year. With such an impressive record, did she still need to make up for it after she returned? Looking at the size and mockery in the group, Coder Monkey wiped his face. I think I can still save. Jiang Pingji didn't have the slightest idea that she had inadvertently caused another programmer to cast a permanent shadow on his career. Right now, she was like a pitiful student being questioned by 5 million teachers' parents. Originally, there were more fans than haters in the livestream room. But now the haters had an overwhelming victory. Jiang Pingji could only be obedient. After all, salted fish in the livestream room had always been amenable to coaxing but not coercion. Acting innocent was also a good way to avoid persecution. As the salted fishes cursed, someone suddenly posted something that made them burst into tears. The other party's hand speed was extremely fast. It was obvious that these words were not written on the spot. Instead, they seemed to have been prepared long ago. After a few hundred words, there was only one sentence left. It's good that you're all right. Jiang Pingji couldn't help but reveal her standard bright smile, the kind that showed all her teeth. Yes, I'm all right. Tuda Feichio. I've been worried that something happened to the streamer. That military salute was too scary. Guekai Guo Fengxiao. Promise us that you won't do military salutes so often in the future, okay? Jiang Pingji's military salute at that time was the worry and anxiety that they would have to repay in the future. Jiang Pingji said helplessly. At that time, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to come back. Even if I came back, the possibility of the live stream room existing was not high. It's just that I don't know how to explain it to you. Look, I've been recuperating for 3 months, and I still can't walk normally. How pitiful, I almost died. When I was on the brink of death, all I thought about was you guys. It's you guys, the cute and amiable little angels, who gave me the strength to climb over the line between life and death. I love you guys, really more true than pearls. Even though he knew that Jiang Pingji was talking nonsense, the sentimental salted fish was still fooled and cried loudly. Just as Jiang Pingji said, she was still so weak after recuperating for 3 months. It was obvious how dangerous it was when she was injured. The salted fish were soft-hearted, not to mention that Jiang Pingji was someone they had watched grow up with. Or rather, someone who had grown up with them. At that moment, a salted fish couldn't help but ridicule. Gurengui Guren Gui after a rain. I bet that the little angels you mentioned definitely don't include creatures like the coder ape. In an instant, the bullet screen became a hot topic. And it even became a trending topic. Shinla Zyakukai. Ha ha ha, I'm dying of laughter. You can't get over the coder ape joke, can you? Shuashia. How can it be so easy? After all, the three treasures of the livestream room are the streamer, the salted fish, and the coder ape _ smiley face, angle _ Jiang Pengji expressed that she didn't know anything. Innocent, pitiful, and weak JPG. Of course, there was no lack of fans who thought that the streamer was invincible. They didn't believe Jiang Pengji's words. The streamer was such a powerful person. How could she be easily beaten to the point of hovering between life and death? When Wei Ci came over and carefully accompanied her on a walk with her walking stick, this wave of salted fish was also sad. They had only been away for 3 months, and their daughter had been violently beaten up. Sad. Relying on the clever manipulation of acting pitiful, Jiang Pengji successfully made the fans who had previously turned from fans to fans and continued to spout nonsense. Jiang Pengji expressed that it was very good. Her daily source of happiness had returned. Although she was seriously injured, Jiang Pengji was in good health and recovered quickly. When the coldness of the North Abyss completely dissipated and the people changed into spring clothes, Jiang Pengji also got rid of her walking stick and returned to her lively state. Based on this state, we'll be back to Dongqing soon. Qiguan Rang's hand that was holding the pen paused. He looked up and said coldly, "Back to what, Dongqing?" Jiang Pengji. Suka came in carrying a tall stack of documents that blocked his view. He was panting after putting them down. He was already so old, but he still had to work overtime until he was bald. It was really hard on him. "My lord, you have now unified the 5 countries in the world. The 5 countries are all gone. It's time to choose a good time and a good new name." Dongqing, Nansheng, Beiyuan, Xichang and Zhengzhou had to be called. Those who did not know would think that the world was still in chaos. From the emperor to Shun and Yu, they all had the same surname but different names. There were only a few who unified the world. My lord's virtue is no less than that of the wise emperors of the Ming dynasty. The first important thing for those who established a country in the past dynasties was to establish a name. Establishing a new name meant changing dynasties and completely drawing a clear line with the old era. This was a matter of great historical significance. This matter was very important. Jiang Pengji said, "Do we still have to choose?" "Of course it's Jiang." Suka was stunned. "Choose the surname as the name of the country?" "My lord, are you sure you want to be so casual? At the very least, it would give those talented ministers a chance to show off their knowledge." Qiguan Rang also felt that it was inappropriate. His lord could secretly insert Jiang as a backup name, but she should not be so obviously narcissistic. Jiang Pengji asked them in return, "Isn't Jiang good?" Suka said, "The surname bestowed by the heavens is naturally good." From the design, choosing the style of the dragon robe to the start of the production, it would take more than half a year, even if hundreds of royal embroidery maids with exquisite embroidery skills were gathered to work day and night. Jiang Pengji felt a headache when she heard this. "I'm just a patient who has just recovered from an injury." What a pitiful patient. Why couldn't he let her go? Suka said solemnly, "My lord, I already know everything." Jiang Pengji was speechless. Xuanmei, that big mouth. Chapter 1843. Be brave enough to admit your mistakes and never repent. These 8 words were probably referring to Jiang Pengji herself. Just a few days ago, he had promised her nicely, but a few days later, he went back on his word. Every time he looked for her, he would have to run errands for her. Su Ku and the others couldn't help but have a rebellious thought. Their lord's injury wouldn't recover so quickly _ smiley face. Angle _ seriously. The lord who had recovered her vigor was like a monkey. She jumped up and down, and could not be found at all. There were many things that no one could handle except for Jiang Pengji. This was limited to matters related to the ascension to the throne. Jiang Pingji was particularly impatient with these empty rituals. She did not like them. Qiguan Rang and the others had no choice but to pass this heavy responsibility to Wei Ci. No matter where Wei Ci was waiting for the Lord, he must let her settle the matter, so that the day of the ascension to the throne hall would not be delayed. Wei Ci. Jiang Pingji couldn't help but slap the table and laugh maniacally. When Zheng and the rest have also learned bad things. They're driving so fast that they can fly. After being together for so many years, Wei Ci could now understand some of the weird things that Jiang Pingji said. He could not help but blush. What do you mean, my lord? Jiang Pingji hooked her arms around his neck and breathed lightly into his ear. She said ambiguously, what if Zixiao is blocking someone in between the sheets? Wei Ci, nonsense. Wen Zheng and the others were all decent people. How could they be like their lord, who would speak dirty words at the drop of a hat, and say such shameful and vulgar things? However, since Zixiao took the initiative to deliver himself to me, I won't stand on ceremony, and will kindly accept it. Jiang Pingji's arms slithered into his clothes like a snake. The skin under her palms was warm and firm. She could feel his heartbeat through his skin. Every minute of the night is worth 1,000 gold. Wei Ci raised his hand and grabbed Jiang Pingji's hand, which was randomly lighting the fire. His posture was that of Lu Xiaohui, and he did not move. I don't care. My lord has already made her choice. We'll talk about other things after we're done with our business. In any case, it was an important task entrusted by Qiguan Rang and the others. Wei Ci could not let Jiang Pingji fool him. Jiang Pingji was speechless. How long had it been since she had eaten meat? Wei Ci had to say something that spoiled the mood at this time. She had to hand it to him. My color is not as good as these drawings? Jiang Pingji twirled the few drawings between her fingers. They were all ideas about the newly made dragon robes for women. If Jiang Pingji was a man, she could make some modifications based on the predecessor's style. But she was a woman. She couldn't follow the old pattern. After all, she was the first female monarch in history. Every detail had to be unique. For this reason, Master Yuan Jing and a few other knowledgeable scholars gathered together to look for documents and materials. They tried to change the dragon robe into one that was most suitable for her. It took a lot of effort to submit 8 sets of blueprints. Almost all of them could be used, but it still depended on Jiang Pingji's personal preferences. After she made up her mind, this dragon robe would also serve as a template for future emperors. It was of great significance. However, Jiang Pingji had an unusual sense of beauty. It would be fine if she just randomly chose one. But the key was that someone beside her had to tell her the meaning of every detail of every drawing, and every detail of the dragon robe. They had to ask her if it was okay, and if she wanted to change it to something else. Jiang Pingji's eyes were filled with mosquito-repellent incense when she heard the last part. After hiding for a few days, he finally could not resist Wei Ci's temptation and walked right into the trap. Zixiao had also learned bad things. Wei Ci said, my lord's color is naturally unparalleled in the world, but I thought that my lord's appearance in the dragon robe would make heaven and earth pale in comparison. Jiang Pingji was silent for a moment. She could not help but put her long legs on his shoulders and said with a smile, I didn't expect that the thick-browed, big-eyed, and righteous Zixiao would have such an unknown hobby. You also like to role-play. You want me to wear the dragon robe and have sex with you? Wei Ci was speechless. The older people got, the more they knew how to restrain themselves. However, the older his lord got, the more she did not know what the word shame meant. He said it so casually, but he felt that he was too shy. How can I not agree to Zixiao's request? The drawing of the dragon robe that was presented was not fancy. It looked simple, but it could not hide its calmness and grandeur. It was also a 12-chapter royal robe and 12-chapter royal robe, but the style was somewhat different from what people knew. It was more inclined towards a woman's figure. Among them, the 12-chapter royal robe was made of copper, and the robe was made of silk. It was black on the outside and vermilion on the inside. The front and back of the robe were 1 foot wide and 2 feet and 4 inches long. There were 12 robes at the front and back, and they were pierced with colorful jade beads. The colors were red, white, green, yellow, and black. The content was supported by literature. As for the 12-chapter royal robe, there were 8 robes drawn on the robe. The sun, moon, and dragon were on the shoulders, the stars, mountains, and rivers were on the back, and the fire, insects, and zongi were on the sleeves. The 4 chapters of the robe were Zhaozhao, Mi, Yi, and Fu. The middle sheet was made of plain muslin, and the color of the robe matched with the robe. In addition to the overall style, there were also jade accessories that dazzled Jiang Pingji. Even the readers would find it difficult to understand. She also didn't know how those great scholars had the time to go through so much trouble for so long, and even came up with several versions. It was said that there were several versions, but in fact, the positions of the patterns on the 12-chapter royal robe were different. She did not know whether it was fate or aesthetics, but the dragon robe that Jiang Pingji chose was the same as in her previous life. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Yes, didn't Wei Xi know what the future dragon robe would look like? Why did he not let him decide? Why did he have to make her go through all this trouble? Wei Zixiao, you are so evil. Wei Xi said. The meaning is always different. I hope that this life of yours will be perfect, without any flaws or regrets. Choosing the dragon robe was also a kind of pleasure, wasn't it? Jiang Pingji fiercely bit his collarbone, leaving an ambiguous mark. They were flirting with each other until the next morning. Looking at the byt that Jiang Pingji had thrown into the brazier to burn, one could tell how the battle between the two of them had been last night. Before ascending to the throne, Jiang Pingji had announced to the world that she would name the new country Jiang, and change the era name, which was equivalent to declaring herself an emperor. She was an actual emperor, but she had yet to put her seal on it in name. Since she had yet to embark on the path of enlightenment, she could not be considered to have truly ascended to the throne. The officials still used the old way of addressing her. The palace was renovated 2 years in advance. After Jiang Pingji arrived in Pingfengdu, which was the future imperial capital, she moved into the palace that had just been renovated halfway, and began to gradually formalize the team. For example, she abolished the official titles that had been used in the troubled times and the 5 countries. She further clarified the jurisdiction and responsibilities of each official. At the same time, she would confer titles to the officials, reward them, promote them, and punish them. The overall system leaned towards the 3 provinces and 6 ministries that Salted Fish in the streaming room was familiar with. However, the 3 provinces and 6 ministries were still very different from the 3 provinces and 6 ministries system that they knew. The most obvious point was that Jiang Pingji's control of power was more centralized, reducing the room for the aristocrats to intervene. The world had just been established, and the military power was in her hands. Even if someone used the example of the predecessors to mock Jiang Pingji, she could not be bothered to care. I have no regrets. The identity that he was obsessed with in his previous life was worthless now. He had already seen through it. As long as he could still stand by the person in front of him and accompany her through the seasons, it was the greatest happiness. Whether it was a coincidence or not, on the day that Jiang Pingji ascended to the throne, the streaming room happened to have a new episode of Dreaming of 1,000 Years. Congratulations to the audience Idle Fish reader for drawing the quota for the XXX episode of Dreaming of 1,000 Years. When the new emperor set off, he was in a trance. The scene suddenly changed from his home to a spacious outdoor space. He did not notice that the bullet screen in the streaming room was exploding. Tudafetio. Oh my god! Jinwang Raigon. I'm so envious of the real name system. Before he could react, he heard the familiar chime music. It was the chime music that he had recorded in the streaming room. It was said that the streamer would use it on the day of her ascension to the throne. He felt that he did not have the chance to see it in person, but it would be great if he could listen to it. In the end, he stayed among the officials, his gaze following the figure in the red and black imperial robe as she moved slowly. The weather was excellent that day. The sky was clear, and the air was refreshing. There was a gentle breeze that filled the robe. The 12 beads collided with each other as she walked, making crisp and melodious sounds. The god-slaying sword hung from her waist. She wore the 12 imperial robes, and the 12 beads on her head. She walked up the stairs step by step. The emperor was in a trance, as if he was in a dream. I will watch you rule the world with my eyes while I am still alive. From first acquaintance to the present, this journey had finally come to a successful end. When her figure was against the light, many people had tears in their eyes. They formally bowed to her for the first time. Long live the emperor! Her voice resounded through the sky, as if it wanted to rush up to the clouds and leave an everlasting mark. Please remember the domain name of this book. Come to read the mobile version. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.